The time is 6 o'clock, so please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. We have our newest board member, Bill Dane, Director Peter Ledoux, Director Carly Kincaid, Director Carl Terry, and I am Tina Beach. And Dr. Middleton is in their cabinet over there, so thank you. I think Ava has sports tonight, but we have a student representative, Ava Arsenio. Next we have, moving on to 2A, board comments.
Do you want to start?
Sorry, it's hard to see in your line here. Peter, did you?
I'm just happy to be here. I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yeah, quick congratulations to the National Honor Society members that were inducted last night. So a little round of applause for them. And then just other things that are coming out, right? It's getting sunny, so there are a lot of activities that are starting to come up. I'm not going to steal Director Kincaid's thunder, but like kindergarten roundup and National Night Out and all the stuff that's coming. I'm just excited to actually see more people out and about, right? The rainy, gloomy times of the year as everybody kind of shelters in place. And then I'm also just excited to hear from the high school tonight, right? As they're our last stop before students enter the quote unquote real world. So it's exciting to see everybody come up and along the way. And then I'll always continue with my outrageous ask thing again, right? My email's on the website. If you want to talk, grab coffee, chat about the district, chat about activities, hobbies, anything like that, email me, right? Reach out. I'll try to be as approachable as possible. So that's it for me.
Director Kincaid.
I just wanted to say that I'm excited to be in the high school and hearing everything that they're going to share tonight. And that we're just a few days from May, which means the countdown is on to the end of the year. And I know, at least in the classroom that I've been in lately, they're all getting excited for summer coming. So seniors, keep pushing. You're almost done. Hang in there. And teachers too. We're almost to the end of the year. So exciting times coming.
Just echo what we've heard and really excited to hear from the high school. Looking forward to getting an update on the progress that they've made on their last year's goals and their goals for next year as they look forward. Also, just wanted to say that I really appreciate, I was at the a building, a facility group last night. I forget the name of it, but a wonderful group of stakeholders in the community, of teachers, parents, staff, even people that have grown up and lived in this community for their entire life, don't currently have any kids. They're all kind of collaboratively looking at our buildings, information about our buildings, kind of setting our roadmap for some of the things that we need to do from a maintenance standpoint. There was wonderful conversation. Really deep conversation, tough questions, but tough questions to me is exactly what we're looking for, because that is personified by someone that's engaged. And I was really pleased to have so many people kind of spend their time and super encouraged that we're such a good showing. So just wanted to make sure to say thank you to everybody that was there last night.
Just really quickly, of course, thank you to the high school for hosting us tonight. And thank you to the board for excusing me on short notice for the last meeting. We had a family situation come up, so I appreciate the excusing me on short notice. Going last, there's not often a lot extra to say, so I'm pleased to be here and appreciate the hard work of the staff getting this ready for us. So thank you. We'll just move on from there. Next is item 3A, the high school annual report presented by John Neisel.
John, is there a plug? I can plug my computer in. It's about to die there over there. Sorry to stop your thunder.
There's some.
I think it's gonna reach. I have one right over here too.
Yeah,
Can you maybe do behind? See if we can make that work.
I didn't
Sorry.
realize it was there. I would have told you. Got it.
Good. Thank you.
Well, Superintendent, Dr. Middleton and President Beach and Board of Directors, I'm excited to talk about the Granite Falls High School, the progress that we've made this year and extending from last year. And so Mr. May and I are going to be kind of bouncing off each other, kind of adding to each of these slides. So our first goal is around attendance. And so for our goal up there, we're looking to increase our regular attendance percentage from 65.2% to 75.2%. Regular attendance is defined as missing 2 or fewer days of school per month, which end up being wanting students to be in attendance at least 90% of the school year, which is still a lot of absences. So if you think about today, I think we're on day 136. So a student could theoretically miss almost 14 days of school and still be considered in that 90% or greater bucket. So last year, our goal was to raise our rate from 82.7 to 87.7. But what was interesting is where I got that 82.7 was off of OSPI, which was off of what's called the WISA, which is the Washington School Improvements Framework. And they basically look over a 3-year period of time. So that data point was actually from 2019, which is right before COVID. So like that year and the year previous to that, we're at about 85, from 82.7 to about 85% attendance. And then during COVID, I mean, taking attendance was kind of interesting. I think if you basically turned your camera on, you would, mark present. And so last year, our attendance was actually 65.2%. And so if we think about last year with COVID, with quarantine, with kids being afraid to be in school and coming back to school, we kind of dipped there. And we're still kind of fighting our way out of that because down below, currently as of yesterday, 331 of 523 students had attended school 90% of the time or greater, which is 63.3%. And then if you look at the disparity between free and reduced lunch and non-free and reduced lunch, our free and reduced lunch students are only attending that only 54.2% of our students on free and reduced lunch are attending school 90% of the time or greater, where our non-free and reduced lunch students are attending school, 71% of them are attending school 90% of the time or greater. And if you look over this little box, it kind of gives what our entity count was as of yesterday. So for our freshman class, we're at 166, 151 for 10th graders, 105 for 11th graders, and 101 for our seniors. So this is just a graph that showed our attendance over time over the last 5 years. So you can see where back in 2017-18, 85.8, 83%, and then into COVID, 90.6, 87.3, and when we came out of COVID, it dipped down to 65.2%. This also is very similar to this year. So last year, this is a data point from last year, where again, our low income versus non-low income students, there's a disparity of around 16% difference between students attending school 90% or greater. So some of our action steps, our community engagement board, we send out a absence letter to parents for any student that has 3 or more unexcused absences within a month. We are giving out positive behavior incentives. So we're starting to give out incentives every Monday. They're just specific to attendance. So any kid that's in that 90% or greater attendance bucket, we are drawing their names to give incentives and giving their names over the PA. So that's so all students are hearing that. I send out a weekly message to all the parents of students that have chronic absenteeism. So I just look at what day it is. If it's day 120, then any student that has 12 or more unexcused absences, I send a letter or email directly to those parents talking about, the importance of coming to school every day and being engaged in school. We're also having our SSA complete a student attendance assessment. So I think we've had 30 of those assessments that they sit down with the student and survey them on why they're not attending school regularly. And then if all else fails, after the community engagement award, then filing a petition with the courts. And then we also tell our parents or our teachers to communicate with the parents of those students that are not attending. If they also may see a kid kind of go absent for a while, they should be reaching out. And I put on here put that communication, log it into Skyward. We don't have a place yet in Skyward, so we're just having them keep their own kind of written log in their classroom, so we can have that as more information about the fact that we have reached out and made contact with the parents. So our next goal, this is a continuation goal from last year, and this is our on-time rate for graduation. And so what this means is it's based on the percentage of freshmen that passed all of their classes their freshman year. Because if you think about 24 credits to graduate, we're here for 4 years, and if they pass all their classes, they earn 6 credits a year. 6 times 4 is 24. So if they fail one class their freshman year, they're considered off track to graduate. So we had as a goal this year to increase from 68% to 73% of all of our freshmen passing all of their classes. Last year's goal was to increase the on-time rate from 64 to 74. And that number 74 again came out of that WISA, which was again the data point from 2019. So in 2019, 64% of the freshmen had passed all of their classes. Actually, when we look at this current junior class, they had an on-time rate of 45%. So only 45% of those freshmen passed all of their classes. And so when we looked back at that, and that was, I think, the first year of COVID, that there was 80 freshmen failed at least one class back in that cohort when they were freshmen. So we've given a survey. This is our second year giving this perceptions of behavior and discipline survey to our students. And so this year we had 184 students participate. You can see the grade breakdown. And so the reason why I'm going to put these next 2 slides in here is because I think when we think about freshmen, being connected to school, being engaged in school, feeling comfortable here at school, that goes a long ways to being successful in school. So these next 2 slides are kind of disappointing to me because of these students. 60% of them do not feel that students are kind to each other. And this next slide, that 58% of them do not feel that the school is a positive place. And so we kind of talked about this as a staff, because I showed this presentation to our staff the other day. And one of the things that I didn't even think about it, and this is only my second high school that I've been principal at that only has 1 feeder that comes in to our school. Like all the other larger schools that I've been principal at might have 3 middle schools that feed in. And so if we think about our students, they've been together, a lot of them since elementary, so they've kind of built their culture. They've been around each other and they know each other. They've lived in the same neighborhoods and, they've gotten into social media with each other. So they bring all of that with them all the way to the campus, where the other schools that I've been principal at, that first day when you do that freshman orientation, you're integrating like 3 different classes, 3 different schools together as one entity. And sometimes that's a little bit easier to build a culture because it's kind of new to everybody. But here it's pretty much our same kids that come up here. And so trying to break out of some of those, some of that cyberbullying and through a lot of the things that go on in the neighborhoods and the stuff that gets brought onto the campus is some of the barriers that we work with every day to overcome. And so these 4 data points, I went in and pulled these data points. And so I went into the October counts for all of these freshman cohorts of these 4 graduation years. And then I looked in Skyward to look at how many the freshmen failed at least one class. And so I saw back in, 2023, the senior class, 52 out of 118, those freshmen, that was, so 56% of the students had passed all of their classes. You can see it dipped this junior class, there's 83 out of 150 failed at least one class, and then 53 out of 166 last year, our first year out of COVID. And then this year, 50 out of 177 at our semester. So we're trending in the right direction as far as getting more of our freshmen passing all of their classes and then staying on track to graduate. And so some of our action steps. So we started freshman success this year. So every freshman has taken a social emotional learning class for a semester. Next year, it's going to be a year-long class. We started Tiger Period. So most of the time, twice a week, students have that tier 2 intervention, that opportunity in the school day to go to a teacher to get additional help or have extra time to make up the schoolwork. And so we were finding last year when we tried to do some tutoring after school, we just weren't getting many kids to stay after school. So we have their captive audience. So every student that has a C, D, or an F have to go to a teacher to get help. If you're passing all your classes with an A or B, you can still go to a teacher to get help, or you can go sit to comments. And we do still see a lot of those kids, even though they choose to go to comments, they're still doing the work during that time. Within our professional learning communities, our staff have given a lot of data through our map testing, through that data dashboard, through just their own assessments they do in class. So they're talking about that in their PLCs. We also had Link Crew, which did the freshman orientation. And then we started Ignite Mentors this year. So so there was a 1-to-5 ratio of a upper class student leader mentoring 5 freshmen throughout the year. So our last goal, this is a new goal that we added, which is around our state testing. And so you can see that box on the bottom, that was the state average from last year. So the state average for ELA was 50.7% of the students in the state met standard in ELA, 37.7 met standard in math, and 42.7 met the science standard. So last year we had an abysmal percentage of students in math. We had, I think, 20% of our sophomores met standard last year. So we doubled that goal for this year and put it above the state average. And Mr. Mayor and I truly believe that our students, through our map testing data that we've had in our fall and our October assessments, that we see kids trending in the right direction by giving them positive incentives. We're going to go into the classrooms this week because testing starts on Monday, to give them that last kind of rah-rah to take this test seriously, to do well on the test. So we set the goal for 40.5 for math, 60.7 for ELA. So we increased it by 10% from last year's 57.3. We increased our science from 48.4 to 58.4 as a goal for our 11th graders for this year. Some of the action steps. We have a new math curriculum for Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry. And so that comes with some training and coaching for our math teachers. Again, with our measure of academic progress, our map testing, plus by providing incentives. So we gave incentives during the map testing for drawings for homecoming tickets, for prom tickets, for ASB cards, anything that, would incentivize. If you're not intrinsically motivated, then extrinsically, we're trying to encourage the students. Through our work at our PLCs, through that extra time during Tiger Period to help our students. Also, our intensified algebra students were recommended by their middle school teacher. And we also use the IRAD data and also the SBAC data from both 7th and 8th grade for placement of our most at-risk math students coming up from middle school. And then also just by changing that mindset for our counselors from immediately talking to freshmen and trying to put them on a alternate pathway for graduation instead of having the passing the state test being your primary pathway that you should be focusing on. And if that somehow doesn't happen, then we can fall back on some of these other pathways. That's it. So, any questions?
Sure. Board, do you have questions?
Master, no? Okay, so I'll just, I guess, go down the goals. So for school's attendance, obviously it needs to improve. You mentioned, is there a primary reason that you can pinpoint for low attendance? You mentioned sending a letter. When I hear sending a letter about the importance of school, it implies that there's a lack of interest from families that's been pinpointed. Or is it primarily transportation concerns? I know it's going to be a blend of the two, but one has to be a stronger influence than the other.
So one thing that I'll come in. So a couple things. One thing that really was interesting that surprised me. So I looked at the 37 students that we still currently have in our building, freshmen that failed at least one class first semester, and I did the average of their attendance rate for school, and they actually are attending school. That group of 37 are actually been here 84% of the school days. And so that surprised me. I thought that number was good. They were going to be like way low. So one thing I would say is that it's one of the places that's got to continue to be is in our classrooms, you know, the engaging lessons to make kids want to come to school and be here every single day. So I think that's one thing that I think we as a staff can remove that barrier to learning, to make sure a kid is excited to come to school, because we know we have classes that kids are very excited to come to school, and there's some that aren't as exciting, and we need to make sure that all of our classes are. And then, you know, what's disheartening is when I send out the email to directly to those parents of the students that have the chronic absenteeism. I've done this either every week or every other week, and I've gotten 0 responses back from any of those parents. Not one email back like, hey, I'm really struggling to try to get my student out of bed. Is there anything you can do? So it's hard when I'm not getting any communication back. Some of them do call Jamie to clear some of those absences, but a lot of them I'm not hearing a lot about.
So I'm going to jump in just for a second and piggyback off that. Your emails go to my junk mail. So I bet your emails are going to everyone's junk mail, especially if they're using Remind or Blackboard or anything like that. They go straight to junk. So that might be part of the reason.
That could be.
Oh,
So it's a good point.
I seriously, unless I get the thing that says, go find the new email from John Nisley with the newsletter. Without that, I don't even know to go to the junk mail and sift through. But when it comes from at Blackboard or at Remind or whatever, I work in tech and I can't get it to not go to the junk mail. So
Something I can work with Noah.
yeah, so I'm going to just jump in there because I can see that you're like, I don't know why I'm not getting a response, but I think it might be email filters because I just can't imagine there are 0 parents that are interested in this.
Every single day, Jamie puts a printout of the attendance each day at the end of the day. And on average, every day we have about 130 to 150 students that have some attendance activity. They relate to school, where they missed 1 or 2 periods, where they missed the entire day.
Gotcha.
And so that's every single day.
That's what I was going to ask to level set for Peter's question. When you say that you have 2 missed days, do they have to miss all the periods in the day, a certain number of periods? It doesn't matter if it's an excused absence versus an unexcused absence. How do we determine 2 missing days?
Yes.
Okay. Is it the whole day? So if my kid like rolls in late and is unexcused for first period, is that, or I don't know.
It counts, Scour counts by this period, so it's 6 periods in the sailing can have that's what
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to level set. Sorry, Peter, I'll let you
No worries.
continue.
You were gonna.
Just on that, so I've got a daughter in the high school senior, and she missed 2 classes last week. She wasn't feeling good in the morning and I didn't get into the school and I was notified that she missed those 2 classes.
Yep.
So
I get the-
Sent a text that,
Which actually, okay.
Yeah, the text I do get. I do get.
The auto, I mean, an auto dial goes out to every family of a student that misses the school. And also the busing, I mean, if we look at that disparity between our free and reduced lunch and non-free reduced lunch, we know that the buses that we see a lot that aren't running are going to some of our areas in our community where, you know, we have the biggest need for transportation. And so I think that builds over time too. Just, I don't think a lot of those kids are coming to school in buses and, you know, picking them up.
It looks like we have a lot of students that don't want to come to school, but we really have a lot of students that don't.
Yeah.
So like, in all those students that I talk to on the discipline side, I will ask them if I have a problem with attendance, I'll bring them outside resource in, like tell them the sheriff is coming in and offer his services, and we're not going to go and come to school and put the parent and the student down. So it looks like it's all those kids don't want to, but it's really, those kids are very vulnerable.
Yeah, well, because you actually, John, you bring up an interesting point where you said the 39 that are currently failing, their attendance rates are actually decent. So that actually posed another question I didn't have before. Are we missing opportunities? Is there a difficulty of, are there students that either aren't properly being challenged or something? Because if they're not part of that 39, they're passing all of their classes and they're not attending. So I guess, how are we, maybe that's just some homework, or unless you guys have dug into it as well, like how are students missing 50% of the classes and doing just fine, right?
And I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that I'm a big standards-based grading person. And so I believe that, you know, when I have the opportunity to go into classroom or into teacher grade books and kind of look at them like similar class, like if I look at a world history class and I see this teacher has, you know, 70 assignments in there, and this other world history teacher has like 15 assignments, you know, and then has a certain grade that spits out. So I do think that some of it, we've talked about getting back to the rigor of pre-COVID. I think, unfortunately, we're still in this, you know, trying to help everybody, you know, kind of come out of this, you know, on the positive side. But I think we lost some of that rigor in our classrooms and some of that higher engagement for our students that want that engagement. You know, and maybe some of it isn't engaging enough to want to come every single day. And I think they can miss some days and still be able to be successful in the class.
Okay. The next thing I had was, I think, just a little bit more of an observation. So I know whenever we look at percentages when we're talking about students as a whole, it's pretty easy to, there's, you know, the percentages are easy to look at and kind of glaze over. But when we have 166 students in the freshman class, right, every single student bumps that percentage up of students that are not failing a class by 0.6%. And so when I look at this, I say, you know, 45 students in that class gets you to 73%. You know, you bump that another 5 students, right? That's addition. And I know that there are processes going through there, but maybe I don't know who needs to hear it. If it's, you know, the teachers that are helping along or something like that, but it's like one student makes a big difference, right? I know it's probably easy to sit there and say, well, if I help this one kid or these 2 kids, it's probably not that big of a deal. Like, there's only 45 human beings that are failing 1 or more classes. Obviously, the student that's failing 5 classes, that's a really hard hill to climb. But the student that's failing 1, tiger period, like let's push that even harder, right? Let's really push through. So that was just more of an observation of, I feel like we could get that 73%. Like why couldn't it be 85, or takes, you know, another 10 students, right, of just extreme hand holding and pushing through. And then the final thing was the goal of the state testing. And this is just where, you know, I'm part of the Granite Falls School Board. I've had my own experience with public schooling or just schooling in general. But where my mind is having trouble wrapping my head around is like, I mean, what was our graduation rate last year? 90,
2%.
92, and our highest capability in a subject is ELA at 50.7%. And so I just can't wrap my head around how are we having 50% of our students capable up to standard within ELA, but our graduation rates are at 92%. Is it, can you help me understand how that relates to other districts, what everybody's doing? Because I look at that and I'm like, wow, our graduation rates must be terrible, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think that, and again, I left the state, and then when I came back, also we have all these different graduation pathways. I mean, they didn't have those when I left the state. It was the state test, or, you know, if that didn't happen, then an SAT score, or, you know, there's some other alternatives, but it
Yeah.
wasn't all these multiple pathways, you know, alternative pathways. And I think that has lessened the, you know, I think there's always kids that are going to take the test serious no matter what, but for a good number of our students, if it doesn't matter, if they already know I've got the CTE pathway, or, you know, or I got a 31 on the ASVAB, or, you know, I think last year if I had a, you know, an acceptance to, you know, community college, you know, they met their graduation pathway. And so putting a test in front of them where it didn't matter to them, it matters to us. That's why we're trying to incentivize these tests and really get our counselors to start changing that mindset early. Like, no, your primary pathway is the state test, not a fallback if those others don't work, because we're going to be testing, you know, those 80% of the 11th graders, again, that did not pass math assessment last year. So
Because they still get opportunity to, when they pass it, that percentage is just 10th graders.
Yep.
And in the state. So they're not talking about when they pass in the year. So
Okay.
if they take it again, you pass it, that's a check. But then graduation, also it goes back to the where they, certain districts from math, engineers.
okay.
and that's a good point, because I think in my previous year as principal, it's like eventually by the time we get them to graduation, a greater percentage have passed it because of all the retakes.
Okay.
That what gets posted is that one shot as a sophomore, you know, but when we retake it, maybe 30 more 11th graders pass it, and that adds on to that percentage, but that doesn't get posted on the school report.
School report card is, that's what the 10th graders to be, the 11th graders to science, that particular year.
Yeah.
They don't look at it, and the graduation rate talks about the individual, but those testing scores, that's that one snapshot.
Yeah. No,
And to answer your question on the other districts, looking at other districts, yes, you have members that comparison to us, members are way higher, and the other members are pretty much low.
Okay. Okay.
Compared to, I mean, most of them are above the state average, but that's still wrong. The state average is pretty low.
yeah. Okay. No, and I really looking at it, because I mean, it's the blunt question is, right, I said, I know, because we've been on so many of these meetings with all the different schools, right? I know why we do the testing, in theory, but like in reality, I don't know why we do the testing, because they have no consequences. They apparently, by a lot, could be staff, it could be students as well, aren't taken seriously. We preach the importance of data all the time, and it's dangerous to make decisions with just anecdotal, advice. But right, so no data makes decisions difficult, but bad data makes decisions dangerous, right? So if we get data back and we know that it's really not, it makes me question like what decisions are being made out of this when we see 50.7%, 37.7%, like, oh, we need to change math curriculum, we need to change this, but it's like, but if that's not really a problem, it's just because people aren't taking the test seriously. Like, how can we adjust that? Because then as a board member, I want to know, I look at this and I think, holy crap, 1 out of 3 kids understand math at the level that they can. That means, pick the whole thing, look to the left and look to the right. You're the only one that knows what's going on in here. And that's just like, and so like, I look at that and I say, and pardon me too, so this 37.7, was that from this year?
That's last year's.
last year?
State average from last year.
Okay, state average from last year. And what was ours from 20.5? And so that's prior to the new curriculum for math.
Well, we kind of like, reason why I love our district is that we got two tools of data to
Mhm.
use. We use that for SBAC data, that's for efficiency. We
Mhm.
use our map data, that's for growth.
Yep.
And really, our growth of our kids is what we really is ultimately about.
Yeah.
So we really focus on the map data, and the map data helps us with this. So
Yeah.
I want to say that we took the map in the fall. Our winter map scores were abnormally high.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I mean, they were awesome. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Mhm.
Looking forward to the aspect. So when we talk about, yeah, that's proficiency, but if our kids are growing, yes, I'm happy about that.
Okay. Yeah, and then the last piece of feedback too I give, I don't know if there's standard operating procedure or anything behind, like when you're doing parent-teacher conferences and the feedback that's being given. But I mean, similar to exactly what you're doing, right? We're trying to understand, do students understand what they're learning? Are they actually learning? And I've just observed that most conversations are jumped right into a grade. It is, this is their grade. This is the grade on their assignments. This is how it's, been going. I would love to see it shift more towards the grades they're a thing that we can talk about. They're a representation of potentially how well they understand this. Could also be a representation of how available they've been or, whatever, but it's just a side representation. I would love to hear more focus in notes going back home or something, right? Trying to help educate parents on how they can help at home to say, hey, your son or daughter is struggling with this portion of math or something like this. Like they don't really understand this concept. So I would recommend something. And I don't know how to exactly scale that or anything. But right, if your student comes home and they have, a 90% in world history, but you ask them, and they're learning about American history and you ask them who the first president was and they're like, Lincoln. And you're just like, okay, how do you have a 90% in this class, right? It's just, and so it makes me a little fearful that things are just moving towards grades and pushing through. But that's just, again, just another observation. And and I'll continue to make the same, outrageous ask as well too, ask me, anything. If I can't do it, I'll tell you no. But if I can, I'll be happy to jump in. So that's it for me.
Coming at you with a different. So as you probably know, that parental involvement and family engagement is my passion project. So what we know is that the more of that there is, the more student success there is, right? But as students age, the less there is of that. So my question for you guys is, what kinds of things can we tell parents, or that I can tell parents? What are ways that they can be involved at the high school level?
So one of the things I'd love to start, because this is actually the first school I've been at that doesn't have a PTSA. And I think PTSAs have been very insurmountable or very big a part of the success in the schools that I've been at through different scholarship fundraisers that they've done for students, or providing resources into the classrooms for teachers by monies that they raise, and just being there for, like, when we give books out at the beginning of the year in the library. I mean, just throughout the year, there are so many opportunities to be engaged. And I mean, if you look at our boosters for this senior class, they didn't have any through all 4 years. They tried and nobody stepped up. And so they're not having their senior graduation night, and so that's disappointing,
Yeah.
and so we'd love to find ways, and hopefully that can maybe grow as PTSAs in elementary up to the middle school, and then having PTSA, at high school, just to encourage more involvement, and then I think just expanding the boosters, because I know also in the schools I've been at, those encompass the athletics and all the programs at school. It's not just focused on on a graduation event, but it's inclusive in all of the activities that are going into school. So I think just more ways that we can find places for our teachers, because there's definitely room for that. I think just through the eco car, having the parents that came along on that trip, and now those parents want to be involved in being the advisors for the eco car next year. They jumped right in, and I think that was very powerful. His trip, I think, he was on. So, but I think PTSA would be the first place I would love to try to see how to get that going and get parents involved.
I would say, communication is big for my piece. I also would say that do not hesitate to call us, give more calls. We need more belief in us to tell you the truth and not just take news from their student.
Yeah.
And then news from the neighbor, and then say that's the law.
Yeah.
Call us and get the truth. Because I think there's too much of, hearsay, and it never gets to, when you get to the school, it's really a different person to talk to. You could have just called us or came up. I've never turned them away. Come to my office and talk like that any time. I'll stop what I do, what I'm doing, and the parent come in, but just keep that open communication or calling us. And I think on our end, I think it's our fault as well as educators. I believe in parent contact. I think we gotta do a better job as a school to call the parents. And I think that the parents, when they see that number,
Get scared.
it's anxiety of they're in trouble, because when they're in high school or when they're in middle school, they might not got a good call, but when we call them because we care. It doesn't matter the consequence, it doesn't matter what the student did. We call them because we care. We take enough time to call. Yeah, so I just think that we need to come up with teachers. I want to ask a question. How many parents do we have in here? Right, students in our building right now. How many times have you heard from teachers before? Raise your hand. That's what we're talking about. I just believe that we have to do a better job of helping our teachers to know that an email is not parent contact, a phone call is parent contact. And just don't lay it on the principal just to call the parent. I got great relationships with all my parents. I mean, do we get along all the time? No. Do we agree all the time? No, but I feel like every relationship is great. Because the ultimate goal is our students graduate. So I think that we got to do a better job for our teachers reaching out to our parents as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. What an ominous way to start what I'm saying. So I guess I wanted to start here. So my job is to ask tough questions.
All right.
So I just want to, is by far no indication of my confidence in the way that you guys run this school. And I've asked tough questions at every school improvement plan because quite honestly, I'm desperate, right? I'm desperate for our outcomes, our educational outcomes to be better than they currently are. And not because grades are all that matter, not because, having 4 A's or all of those things. It's because the unfortunate reality is that we have kids that will not reach their full potential based upon struggles in our buildings, right? Educational struggles in our building. And I struggle sleeping on that. And we've talked about that with you guys, and I know you do too. So I'm not saying that I'm alone here. And I've said this before, I'll say it all. Grades are not all that matters. But unfortunately, the reality of the situation is that grades are really the only tangible way that we can judge educational outcomes in an organization. There's really no metric or way the OSBI posts relationships or posts, working hard or posts, striving to engage in those kids that are struggling, right? It's, oh, well, here's where you're at. And, one of the things that I know that you guys hear commonly, and I certainly hear as a board director is, oh gosh, well, you got blank, your X amount of graduation rate, or you've got, so many freshmen behind and stuff like that. So, and it's not just obviously we get that in all things. So I've got in front of me your 21-22 Smarty goal and your current goal. And, you know, you guys know me, I like to be frank. You know, obviously your Smarty goal, as far as far as enrollment, as you talked about, as far as attendance, you weren't able to hit it. So then I pulled up next, okay, well, what were the steps that you had on how you were going to get there on your 21-22 goal, and what are the steps that you have on your 22-23 goal? And just to see, okay, what do we, obviously you had a goal, you had a plan, that plan didn't work out. How are we pivoting and identify, adapt, and overcoming now? And one of the things I noticed, and again, I'm not necessarily saying this as a negative, maybe I'm missing something here, but I noticed that significantly all but I would say 2 or 3 of the goals that you had in 21-22 for this goal, you're using for your 22-23 goal. So I guess it begs the question, you know, if it didn't work the first time, why do we think it's going to work this time? Or did we not fully implement the goal? Like, for example, I'm assuming the Community Truancy Board and the Community Engagement Board, that's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed both of them say implement, so I'm guessing that didn't get implemented,
No.
or?
I did not. I will say that we started this, but we haven't had consistency with it as far as me reaching out to people who are part of the board.
Right.
So myself, the SSA, and the ISS coordinator was doing it as well. We started it, but we haven't had it this semester.
Got it. So, I guess and again, excuse me for my bluntness. So I guess, do we all feel confident that's going to happen this time, or?
I do, because I think that systems in place, sometimes they break down for people depend on doing it.
Right.
Conditions, it's the system that we have in our board policy that we got to follow. I do believe that with a better process and we can definitely we have 2 dates, one date in May. If we started hard now, I do believe that starting next year, we'll have a good foundation. We're also going to add the attendance contracts after we have those meetings. So I think if we start hard, the last 2 months of the school year, next year we'll continue those systems.
So how can I support you as a board member, I guess? And I heard you say you're following policy, which I appreciate. Is there something I can do as a board member, policy change or something like that that's going to help you get that?
I think it's a state level change. I think that we're also loose on like our systems of calling in and saying, oh, we excuse this for this. I think we're very loose for that. And then the understanding of what's the unexcused absence and what's the excused absence. Are my excused absence good, or am I going to be, does it count the same for these? I think that no, because that's the laws that we have. We have the law.
Mhm.
So to help, I think that reaching out for community engagement board and putting it on the calendar once a month, sticking to it. I think that yes, be a part of that.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, Director Ledoux talks about the.
I can choose.
Okay, just ask.
We do it.
Yeah, like I said, whatever it takes, man. I'm desperate, and you guys have to excuse me because I've got a number of questions. So I know on your next goal.
Can I speak to one?
Yes,
You
please.
said a lot of them are the exact same from last year, and I just want to say one thing. So Michael and I obviously came in brand new last year, coming to a school that really had been shut down for 2 years. So our data points that we used were the data points for before the school shut down to COVID. And so I think not knowing how kids, because really as we found kids last year, they were almost like in behaviors 2 grade levels below in their academics. They were definitely below. So I think I set the goals a little bit high last year because I took them off of 2019 out of that WISA. And then with the amount of quarantines and the amount of kids that were out, I mean, it's just that target of 87% or whatever was to me very high compared to what ultimately happened throughout that school year. And so I think we kind of reframing kind of a baseline where to start at, kind of starting at kind of how last year ended, and then kind of building off that, then trying to build off of, 3 years ago and trying to make that magically happen right away. When I think that, I think still our kids are hitting that, their stride, as far as coming back 6 periods a day and having to come to school every single day. We got kids that are going on vacation, starting tomorrow for 2 weeks, that still don't understand that, they're in school.
And it's testing time, so me, I'm, high stress because when you go where it's testing starts for Monday, so.
Yeah.
For 10 days, so like this thing. And I think that's a certain culture of, that has came through COVID. Like, I'm gonna spend my time with my kids when I can, not wait till the summer, so that's something that we're trying to get used to. Yeah, because ultimately that's what parents do.
Yeah. I feel that. Okay. So basically just what I'm hearing there is that the goals that you had, obviously COVID potentially were maybe a little bit loftier than the reality and who would have known COVID and those types of things. And I could totally respect that.
But I do take that home too.
Yeah.
Tennis thing, really.
Yeah, it's one that's-
So I want to work through the rest of your goals just because when your goal for this year was kind of monthly unexcused absence letter to parents after 3 unexcused absences within the month. And I noticed that your last goal was weekly communication from the principal to parents of students who have missed more than 10% of class. I mean, a little bit of a different goal, but certainly from a frequency standpoint, going from weekly to monthly, Mr. Maynard, you made a wonderful point about that. And we've talked about this at other school improvement plans, that the communication electronically, letters, it's just not hidden. Like it's just not hidden, right? There's no response. It's maybe fallen into junk mail. There's all of these things that we just don't know. So I guess what makes you think, when we look at this goal now, what makes you think that going from weekly to monthly in a situation that we already know that parents really aren't engaging, how is that going to give beneficial outcome? I guess what data or information you're looking at that thinks that one's a hit?
I mean, I know it's nicely does the monthly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's monthly, but really the contact that I'm calling in between teacher centers that I haven't seen this student, the FT count, have at least I've seen this student. So to be honest, I'm calling, he's sending the monthly letter, and also that one that everybody ignores. They think it's, a lot of parents think it's the bus call every day, and it's not. Because it's sometimes that's called. So there's parents that I thought it was the bus. So
I just told him that.
yeah, I thought it was the bus calling. So I just, sent it to voicemail. So a lot of times when we do call parents, we have to call back right after because they think it's the bus call. So it's tricks of the trade. Also, I'm trying to build a team, or we're trying to build a team that can make parent phone calls, but I like to leave that in administrator's hands, especially when it's about distance, is attendance can.
Yeah, and another data point, because I know that as kids are marching towards that community engagement board, we're then losing some of those students. So we pulled a data point yesterday that since we've started, we've had 83 students transfer to Crossroads last year and this year. And so 37 of those are 11th graders. And so that goes back to that data point of 80 of those 11th graders failed at least one class their freshman year. And they've just been so credit deficient that they have, because of credits, had to transfer up to Crossroads. And then there's a percentage of those that were under discipline, and then there was a percentage of those by parent or student choice, to go up there. But a lot of these kids also had very poor attendance, and so it was, you need a fresh start somewhere that you can catch up on credits, and so when some of these kids that I'm sending out these chronic absenteeism messages weekly to the parents are a lot of these same kids that then ultimately, before they get to that community engagement board or have multiple communications through letters mailed home, when they ultimately are transferred, to Crossroads for another opportunity to try to catch back up or.
Because the 83 number account, we took it personal that 83 students, and then we looked at, we went down each 83 to say, was that a reflection of us, or was that a reflection of academics, was that a reflection of the parent wanting them to be in a different culture? So that's why we took that extra.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, my role as a board director isn't to tell you guys the how, right? Like you guys are way smarter educationally than I am, right? So that's not my role. I guess the reason that I bring that up, because obviously the change in frequency was interesting to me. But the other thing, I guess, was to, I heard exactly what you were saying, Mr. Maynard, and tell me if I heard it wrong, essentially that, you are on the back end calling parents and trying to engage them and stuff like that.
We do have teachers that give us names.
Right.
And like, yeah, let's go call that student. And then that student might pop up for it, say, oh, I slept in today, or I've been sick for a week. But then they try to give us the runaround. Like, for example, one student said they were sick last week. We seen them picking up other students on Tuesday last week. So we're like, no, you come to the office. Why are you missing school if you're sick, not picking up students?
Right.
Even though the school day. So we try to make them accountable and know that we're watching and there are some consequences. But
Right.
then parent comes in and gives that slip and say you're out sick.
Right. So I guess the culminating point I'm making on that is that, but I don't see, I think we can all agree there's a deficiency with teachers, obviously, as we've identified, physically talking to parents, telling them how to engage, here's the help. Yeah. A building. And obviously you're doing that, but I guess I don't see that here. What I see is something that I think we can all say, well, I don't know if letters or those types of things are, we've tried that, it's not really working. So I guess my challenge is that the right goal for number 2 there? Or is it, hey, and again, my job is to tell you the how, but hey, we're going to have teachers directly reach out. We're going to try 3 times physically on the phone to reach out or some other way of doing that. Because to me, it doesn't appear that that's worked. And I don't want to belabor that point. That's just my 2 cents.
I think we do have to incentivize our staff to make not just negative calls about attendance, but positive calls.
Right.
So I think that once we do that for our staff, say, hey, if you make 5 calls, if you log in, and talk to a parent, you'll be putting it in a record, or you'll get this. I think our staff needs that, but I think our staff needs to be trained on communicating or knowing that phone call is better than anything we can do. Talking to a live person on the phone, so they have a conversation.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I'll say this quickly because the board's heard this 4 times now, but I'm attending some monthly seminars by the National PTSA, and they recently had the National Teacher of the Year on there. And she talked about how she, in her training to be a teacher, National Teacher of the Year, no one's ever said, here's how you communicate with a parent. Here's the things to say to a parent. Here's how to tell a parent how to be engaged with their student. Here's how to tell the parent, here are the things I need you to work on at home, right? There is no training with that. All the training is teacher, student, and you call the parent if there's something bad. And so, as Director Kincaid said, like if we have any hope, right, of getting to where we want to go, it's got to be with and through the parents, right? So, to your point, maybe there is training or discussions that we need to have with staff to help give them those tools to be able to reach out, not only for the bad, right? So that you say, oh gosh, what has Timmy done now, but for the good as well, right? And, and those are the types of things that, we as the board can kind of drive home. Okay, Dr. M, how do we get there? Let's figure out a way to do that. Whatever it costs, whatever we need, let's figure out a way to do that. I mean, it's those types of things. When Director Ledoux talks about feedback, those are the types of things that I, as a board member, can positively impact.
Also, Director Ledoux also talked about certain kind of communication in the face-to-face act.
Yeah.
So I think that we do need to have some kind of, for our staff, I don't know about anybody else's staff, kind of talking and say, hey, this is what as a parent, how would you like to be approached? As a parent, how would you like to be taught? And I'm very big on that. do I have a problem calling any parent? He knows, no, because I used to go to rehab and call people all the time that, you know, so on drugs and trying to do assessments. And they get upset and they talk to me. They call about out my name, talk about my parents, talk about everybody, but I still did the job. So that's why I have no problem calling a parent if they're mad, happy, or indifferent. And that's why it's comfortable. But I know teachers in this business are not comfortable picking up the phone.
Right. And that's not necessarily, the point I'm making is that's not necessarily their fault. That's the fault of the system, really not prioritizing, giving them the tools to be able to do that effectively, right? So we're asking them, you know, to do something that's not necessarily in their wheelhouse. So like I said, I don't want to belabor that point.
But I think it is.
I would, for the majority, I would agree.
Or anything. This is scary.
Yeah.
Got a call or a parent.
Oh, man, I was in the day when my principal would knock on my door, right? Like, that's the school I went to, okay? I was just like, oh, no, Mr. Jenkins, oh, no.
But one of the things that you asked, one of the things that I think could help us, and I think it maybe has to go through the GFPA is we don't have that open house. I mean, that's not part of the contract. And so I think for high schools, I think open house is very important because that gives that opportunity at the very beginning of the year where we run our parents through every period of the school day, what, you know, go through their student schedule, and those teachers get to talk about, you know, how the communication is going to work with them and talk a little bit about their syllabus and talk a little bit about their expectations, you know, within the class. And that's something that we don't do. And I think that's an important miss that we have at the very beginning of the year, that we could bring in food trucks. We could find many different ways to get our parents to come to this event. Then I think if they get to see in front of every one of their teachers, you know, about what the expectations are, what the class is about, how do I communicate with this teacher, you know, are they best through emails, are they best through phone calls, are they, I think that's just a miss that we're not here.
Opening the doors early and often, establishing the relationship in late August, early September, and replicating it even quarterly would be ideal. I will say, like, going back to the student teacher conference or parent teacher conference, the high school in particular too, when we first got the emails, I thought there was a typo saying that each conference was 6 minutes long. I mean, it takes 2 minutes to make sure everybody's on Zoom and unmuted. And then that's basically like, he's got an A, any questions? Nope, bye. And you're like, okay, great. So it's just, you know, that part of communication, like you said, it doesn't have to be, I think so often we get caught in this process mindset of, oh, well, I'll reserve that for when I talk with them during the conference that happens twice a year, when it's like, call them, you know, really quick. There's always an open line of communication, leave a voicemail, something along those lines. But yeah.
I think your parent teacher conferences are unfortunately like what I tell teachers, if you don't communicate early and often, if a parent contacts you, it's not the same conversation, is you talk to them first. I think parent teacher conferences a lot of times are, now I'm the parent coming to you wanting to know why my kid is not doing well,
Yeah.
they are doing well, but that open house is a friendly, hey, here's how my class works, here's how we communicate, is.
And actually, not to steal this, but to go off of what Mr. Maynard was saying, of, you know, having not just solely relying, not having your child as the single source of the truth. You go into these open houses and you see that Mr. Johnson or whatever, he tells you all about his syllabus, and how he grades and what he accepts and what he doesn't accept. Your kid can't come in any longer and say, oh, Mr. Johnson said I could turn that in on Friday, or turn that in on Friday. And you say, Mr. Johnson doesn't accept late work. I was there, right? Like, I know that, but so, yeah.
So still plugging along, sorry, guys. So could you talk to me real quick about the file petition with Court for Beck after community engagement board? Talk me through that. That's a new one that wasn't there last year. What exactly does that mean? What does that look like? What are you doing?
So once we complete that student's assessment with the SSA, if the student continues to show his age, we file a petition in court. And actually, sometimes they kick the petition back and then have a right date, or we didn't have a letter of proof of a letter that was sent out before the petition was given. Most times they'll send a petition out. Court get it, they'll send a letter to the parent and they gotta show up. Mr. Davis, who joins, well, over attendance, he'll show up and talk about the attendance.
So are we doing that now?
Yes, most of those ones that we've had have always got to them, have transferred and left the school. Whereas, for attendance.
And so, go.
When I was first administrator in Monroe, I was in charge of attendance for the school district. So back in 2000, it was criminal to miss school. And so the Becca bill, if you filed a petition, I would go to court every Thursday on behalf of the school district. And then I would meet with the parent and the student before we could go in before the judge, and the judge could lock the student up. You know, there had to be a purging event to be able to get out. So it could be, judge could have them write why is school important to you, and they may let you out an hour, they may let you out 2 weeks, depending on how well written that letter was. They could find the parents, they could do a whole plethora of things. Then it moved to civil. It's just civil to not attend school. And now the courts really, if they're 17 years old, you know, close to 18, they just don't have a fight anymore on the courts. And so filing a petition is kind of that last step for us, but there's really not a lot of fight in what the courts are doing to intervene in the attendance of the students. And so 20 years ago, a lot of fight, now not so much.
I appreciate your candor in explaining that to me. So I guess, like with the last one, I guess I just asked the question. What I hear is something that we're doing now doesn't really have any power or any bite. Like, I mean, is continuing to do that going to move us to where we're going?
Overall, I think it is working for our district. Has some successes of the school petitions. It's helping particular kids in that school.
Yeah.
So, well, I think the petitions is going to change 25% of our population. I don't think so. But then again, you have to think outside the box, right? Students to school.
Yeah.
That's why I just asked Marks for the 2 vans and you gotta go pick them up.
And so the last one that was in the 21-22, but it's not here, and I actually thought was probably one of your most, to me, impactful, was your goal 6 from last time. Teachers discuss strategies and PLCs and encourage students to come to class every period of every day, ready and engaged in learning. That's not in this one. Did that, hey, we did it, it worked, victory, we don't need to do it again? Or I guess talk me through why it's not on this one. And maybe the answer is, you know, it didn't work, so we're trying something different or something like that. So, you know, like, give me your thoughts on that.
I think it was just a given. I mean, our teachers are doing that this year.
Okay.
I got 3 teachers, they tell me, he's always telling me about students that come to school, right? It's always giving me a list of students about not coming to school consistently. I would say, it was to help us. So, I haven't seen the spirit for a long time, what's going on. So those teachers are putting it on the radar. I just don't think it's put it aside.
Yeah, I mean, I think it, like you were saying, I think it's inherent with what we hope. I don't know if it's a measurable thing. I mean, it's something that I do believe is the root of the problem, that I think in every one of our classes was an engaging, excitable. I mean, I remember back when I was principal at Hazen, one of my son's favorite teacher, you would see students running down the hallway. They would not be late to that class. And once they got in that door, they're on the edge of their seat, you know, from bell to bell, you know, and kids would not make. And then I'd follow these kids that were always inherently late to class. And I'd follow them, and then I would see a very lackadaisical class, you know, didn't have a bell ringer right at the beginning of the period, didn't take attendance right at the beginning, didn't engage the kids, you know, throughout the period, and kids were like laissez-faire whether they went to that class or didn't go to that class. And so I think engagement is a big part of this battle, is kids wanting to come every single day to every period into an engaged, rigorous, meaningful class that they can see has some value and some purpose for what they want to do, you know, for the rest of their lives. That's the end goal of what we're trying to do as instructional leaders.
Another little bit added is that we implemented a target system, target passes this year. And I think that really helped students it's the bill of same target, same time to the targets. Students come down to the office in the past and say, hey, I'm targeted. And they go to class. They got to go in the class for the past. So I think that really helped out with the system, with that system, because nobody wants to go down to the office. The teacher can't take more than 2 or 1 hour pass. That makes you so all the time. Now it's getting a little loose because it's sunny outside, so we might have to tighten up our systems towards the year, but that's traditionally how it goes when the sun starts coming down. Students try to get a little loose and target or get this away. Our campus parties.
Well, let me tie this all together real quick on this one. Do you mind going to your slide for smart access to meet SMART goal number 1? Just real quick. Yeah, if you don't mind going, yeah, the number 1. So on there was, no, the actions, slide 5 in mine. So of those 7 goals, what of those goals aren't you currently doing? What of those are new or different things that are from actions that we currently are undertaking?
I don't see the community engagement for make sure that it's consistent with that, and I just do it once or twice.
Yes.
I think the SSA, that was something new that we started here in the last month. So having that individual sit down with those students and make them go through an assessment. And Crossroads told us they helped us. Then with the Tiger Box, I mean, we start on Mondays focusing just on attendance. And so, you know, where to get a Tiger Pockets for doing those above and beyond things, they probably haven't been targeted as much towards the kid attending every single day, but we're going to start pulling kids on Mondays that are in that 90+% attendance ratings and have them be recognized for their positive.
That was a suggestion from our department heads that we need to start, because we presented them with the problem, we're trying to strategize around it. That we start getting tighter ones for the students who have 90%.
So I guess my point, and again, it's not my job to tell you how you guys are going to get there, right? You're way more smarter than me, but I guess what I hear, you can certainly stop me if I'm wrong, is there's things in there that maybe we aren't doing with complete fidelity, but of those 7, in some form or some function or in some frequency, we're kind of trying it now. And so I guess my challenge or the thought that I have as someone that's coming at this as desperate to lift this district to where I know it is. We are full of wonderful students and teachers and enriched education and all of those things, is maybe we aren't looking hard enough, maybe, at really leaning into what new or different things. Give me a second, let me quote my father, who's going to be very happy when he watches this video. My dad used to always tell me that losing is the greatest gift that the world can give you, because losing causes you to reevaluate everything, right? I tried, I prepared, it didn't work. What about my trying and my preparation and my outcome didn't work, right? It caused you to reevaluate everything. He used to tell me winning is dangerous because it lulls you into a sleep. Everything I'm doing is great. I'm fast enough, I'm strong enough, right? I'm just going to do the thing that I did last time, right? We lost, right? Not just the high school, we all lost, right? They're pretty widespread, we all didn't make goals. Are we really shaking the system hard enough to really go, hey, what do I need to do to change these outcomes so that I can get there this next time? Or are we pushing the cart forward and saying, oh, well, you know, fidelity will get us there because, or, you know, consistency will get us there, which it potentially may. But I don't know if I can sleep on that. If I could sleep on, we're just going to run the option more, right? Sorry for a football analogy, and that's going to get us there, right?
I think that we acknowledge that we need to do better than that. We have not even lost the battle of attendance. I think that when I look at sports, right, as Falls High School, I look at 1 state level and then 2 national level. I think that we're losing statewide in sports. We're all down for attendance. the focus on that. So we do have to think outside the box on how we're gonna get our kids to school. And we haven't come up with the, I don't feel really comfortable that we came up with a great game plan. You know, are we thinking about it every day? Is it in our forefront? Are we planning or are we trying things? I don't think that we have a great one.
I'm gonna be totally frank and honest. I mean, I've never had to face this problem before. And all the schools I've been at has had 93+% attendance every single year. So this is a problem I have never faced. I don't have, outside of these things that I put on here, I mean, this is testing my balance of what I believe we could do in the school that are just systems type of things. But as far as that, like you're talking about really extending beyond and outside the box.
Yeah.
I mean, we live it every single day because we got kids walking into school at 8 o'clock, 8:05, 8:10, you know, with their energy drinks from the local, you know, drive-through coffee places, just, you know, coming in casually, you know, and not, you know, so we see it every single day. We know once the kids get here, we can control with these tardy passes and all this stuff, the movement of kids in the school day, you know, to their classes, but getting them here, you know, that's been a head scratcher for me because I've never lived this, you know, this problem. This is a new problem to me. And I don't have a lot of great answers, you know, to getting the kids down off the mountain, but getting, you know, kids, you know, in from everywhere. It's a new problem to me. And, you know, I always say when we get them here, we can educate them, but getting them there, it's a daily struggle every single day. And I don't have great answers beyond getting the bus and picking them all up.
Well, I was gonna say something, but I saw you about.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, I think that as we move into what we should be, this is definitely an MTSS topic that, you know, a team of MTSS, so.
I know it stands for multi-tier, but just for people.
Support, sorry.
Yeah.
This is a problem that we need to bring in a team in, and I'll talk to Beth about MTSS for next year. I think it's trying to maneuver around some things, and I'm going to mention that. We can talk on the side note about trying to maneuver around, but I think that as bringing in the team, our SSA are a big part of it. That's why we brought it in. Suggested it's a big part of that, because they know that we have certain kids that are just going to be at school at 9 because what time they get here. You know, we have kids that are in the mental, there's cops sleeping, couch hopping, and we got kids that live outside the boundaries and catching buses. So that problem, it wakes me up at night. So I just want to let you know that it's not that we're just kind of pushing the car. No, we're trying to figure out things that to do to fix that.
Mr. Nice, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your candor there, because those are the types of things, right? It seems like every time I in my coming and goings, every time I bring up, well, you know, hey, I've never seen this before. How are you guys doing with that? There's someone who goes, oh, well, you know that there's a teacher, or there's a resource. There's a group will come in and they've got a grant and they'll help teach you that. So, because we can work on that, right? And that, like, now that I know that, I can look at Dr. M and I can say, hey, let's engage resources to help come up with strategies for us to do that. I'm sure there's a billion different out there that we can do and stuff like that. And so now we can, you know, have, as you were saying, a community of people that can come along and say, okay, hey, I've lived through a high school. I was a principal of the high school that had this problem. Here's what I did. Here's how it changed and stuff like that. I mean, whatever it takes, right? If you don't have the tools or the background to do that, I want to support you, right? Because your success is my success. It's all of our successes, right? So I appreciate that. Just one more question. Hopefully this is quick. I didn't see any feedback on how you did on your SMART Goal 2 and 3 on this presentation. Can you just give me a quick download on how you did on those? On your previous 21-22 SMART Goal 2 and 3, I was using perceptual data for staff, students, family, and our community, increase the 9OT rate for freshmen.
So on here, so last year's goal was to increase the time rate from 64% to 74%.
Okay.
So last year.
Oh, so 9OT means ninth on time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what that means. Okay.
So last year we got to 68% of our freshmen passed all of their classes. So our goal was 74. And that was based, again, I'm going back to 2019 data, which was 64. I just put a 10% increase, and we got to 68%. We're at 70. Okay, so we are right now. We're at. So right now we're at 72%. 50 out of or 77. But out of those 50 students that failed a class their first semester, only 37 of those kids are still here at school. So 13 of those kids have either withdrawn from school or they've transferred to Crossroads. So now we're down to 37 out of, I think we have 166 students that are in this freshman class right now.
One quick thing, like I actually have an outrageous ask now that I was thinking about my, students failing one class and Carl mentioning, are we shaking the tree hard enough? So my outrageous ask is, do you know out of the 37 you said that remain, how many of them are just failing one class?
So we have about, out of those 37 kids, I would say that about 13 of them are failing 3 or more classes.
Okay.
And a greater percentage of them are failing 1 to 2 classes.
So I was just gonna say, like, that would be my outrageous ask is, could you commit, and it might not succeed in it, but commit to trying to get those students that are failing one class, so then that's the goal. So not 73% or whatever, but every student that's failing just one class, like, shake that tree harder, right? Get those students, start to that point to get them up in this positive light. Beyond that, I think, like that's it.
We have summer school for, I think the 9 days after school gets out. And so, so we're targeting, a lot of these kids to get them in and either earn back that credit, or we'll have ingenuity running, through the summer for kids to make up some classes. So trying to get them to quickly make up that one class and just that one.
Okay.
So I was going to commit this just a little bit different way on this. So again, in my comings and goings, I know that there's a lot of high schools that are switching to a block schedule. And the advantage of a block schedule is it allows you to depth, and it's a situation where potentially if you're failing one class, you're not credit deficient, right? Because you're over your 4 years, you're able to generate class. So failing one class doesn't automatically say that you're not off track. And I know that there's a whole world of things that would have to happen if we said, oh, Grand Falls High School is in a block schedule, right? I know there's all of those things, but if you guys come to me and you say, Carl, here's the data that says that we need to do this, and here's all of the reasons why it works, like, let me go to battle, right? I'll fight the fights, right? I'll take the licks, whatever needs to happen, if that's what you guys tell me to do. So I guess I'm just encouraging you that if you haven't looked at that, I can tell maybe you have a little bit, reading some body language here, like, let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about that.
I know that Beth and I and a couple of our teachers at the high school were going through this NIC, was it the class? Or, so it's about looking at inclusive education. So looking at the percentage of our special ed students that are in gen ed classes 80 to 100% of the time. And so, a 6-period day, if a student is in a resource class and they're in a special ed class, they're already below that 80%. So, I mean, if you went to a different type of schedule, I mean, that also would help in that percentage as well. But we've looked at it, it's the staffing, we need more staffing, for those type of things. Another thing that we've talked about is, and I know when I was in the Kent School District, we used to remain on a 6-period day because a lot of our, we had a lot of high school credits that were down in middle school. So we wanted every student to come to the high school with at least a half a credit, if not 1 credit. So a lot of CTE classes, PE, math. There was some science that was down in Spanish, was pushed down into the middle level. So kids had opportunities to bring a bank of credits already when it came to high school. So they had a little bit of cushion, to fall back on. Plus, as we looked at our math data, if you don't start in algebra, like I was just in a class that Kevin Davis had, myself, our counselor, and called ADL. And so it looked at, I think it was last year, we had like 81 freshmen that were taking algebra, and only 30 of them made it to algebra 2, and none of them made it into pre-calc or calculus. You know, but if the kid is in geometry as a freshman, you know, a good, you know, that ratio stays pretty much tighter. And then ultimately a percentage of them get into calculus, you know, and so we need kids taking algebra identical middle school and coming to us already in geometry, or they're never going to get on track, you know, to make it in calculus. So that's.
And for any big idea, I know there's always a million reasons not to do it or roadblocks. What I'm saying is let's have a conversation based upon all the reasons to do it. Then without you guys having to figure out the staffing and all of that stuff, you know, at the beginning. And then we talk about Dr. M, how could this look, right? Dr. M is in charge of the how. Dr. M, this seems like a good idea. How could we do this? What would that look like? What would that cost? How, you know, blah, blah, blah. What would that take, right? And that to me is how something like that feeds. So if that's a direction that you guys need to go, I'm saying I'm very open to have that conversation. I want to be quick here because I know I'm taking a lot of time. Did you, number 3, did you give any feedback? 21, 22, you said you would provide social reintegration supports for 100% of staff and students by June 30th. I didn't see that in here. Maybe I missed it also. Was that in here, how you performed to that?
Well, that was one that when we talked about the that perception survey, just kind of surveying our teachers and how they were feeling coming out of COVID and what type of supports that we could have for them, so they felt, you know, just with their own mental health. And so I think that was something that we didn't continue on as another goal because we were now a year more removed from COVID, but it's nothing that I think measurable that we could say that the health of our teachers mentally, you know, was at meeting a goal or not meeting a goal of that. I think that was just something that when I talked to Dr. Ranker, she was thinking that she helped me on that goal. It wasn't 100% clear to me, other than it was more about transitioning from COVID, from, you know, being an online teacher to classroom full time and just taking care of their health, you know, in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So it's just not one that we continued on as a goal.
Because with the student improvement plans, teachers are involved, so we want to show that. So we know that from that COVID, you guys are a big part of this. So that's what we need to have.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll finalize real quick and then maybe we'll take a 5-minute break here. I appreciate all of the great communication. And I just want to clearly say that, you know, as I said in the beginning, none of my questions is to say that I question or I don't believe in the leadership. I was on the hiring panel for both of you guys, right? I believe in you. If anything, what I'm trying to do is to encourage you to be audacious, right? I'm encouraging you that, listen, I'm ready to run. I'm ready to do work. Tell me where to do work, right? If you could say anything about Carl, if you give him an adjective, it would be tenacious. I am tenacious, okay? And I will do what I feel like needs to be done for the best outcomes for the people and the families that we serve. So if there's not audacious things on here and you're holding those inside because of the mountain of roadblocks that might be there, well, let me move those roadblocks away from you so that we can do the best that we can for the students and families we serve. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Can I make a motion for a 5-minute, 5 minutes? Is that 5 minute?
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Oh, yes.
Just out for curiosity, I'm just curious. Is there any theme to the classes that the students are failing?
Is there a theme to why they're?
No, like,
Which class?
is it math? Is it ELA? Is it Peter Ledoux's underwater basketball class? Like, what,
Yeah.
is there like?
That class is horrible.
Yeah, I know.
It's horrible.
Is there any kind of theme to
I mean, I think the core classes, I mean, math and science are definitely, you know,
The top.
and ELA, I would say, you know, electives. I mean, there's
some electives that I think it's.
yeah, I mean, some of them you gotta be attending, like PE would be.
Yeah.
one that
I was
you're
just
not
curious if
gonna-
it like related kind of to their like math scores on the test or the ELA scores or anything like that.
Well, I would say I was thinking about what the Lewis saying about getting that one, that people 13 that had one thing. My mind went straight to how many are that 13 is.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about how many cars that group is. The applications for is taking. So that they. So I was thinking about what classes are that we have a little bit higher numbers. Than rates than,
Are you guys okay hanging for, if we take like a 5-minute recess?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know.
I just need to take a 5-minute recess if that's okay, but also you've been standing for a while, so you can have a seat. We will return at
7:35.
7:35 it is. See. Corey, do you mute us?
This is my phone.
It's 7:35, so I'm gonna resume the meeting. Thank you for allowing a 5-minute break there. Corey, are we okay to start? Okay. I'll let you pull that back up. So I have a few questions based on the slides, but appreciate it.
Questions on John's slides then?
I do, yeah.
Okay, I'll move this back up for you.
Sorry, we've been here a minute, so I wanted to take a break so that we could come back and. So I'm the last set of questions, I promise, but so I actually, I'm going to start at the end. I know that we have great notes that are being taken, and because we're asking you to stand there, you don't have a pen and paper to actually take any of this down. So I hope that you'll take the meeting minutes and kind of look through it for some action notes, because I think there's a lot of ideas here that, when you're here, you're probably thinking, ooh, I should remember that tomorrow. But there's so many little things to remember, and we're keeping you on your feet to do this. So I hope that will challenge Melanie and Paris and the notes that are being taken to, when those get sent out, that maybe you could review those and it will trigger those thoughts. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the beginning. So we did discuss, I'll tell you as a parent, so I'm going to talk as a parent and as Director Beach. And as a parent, I learned some things today. So I get the texts that says Sage missed 3rd period, unexcused or whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, like that actually means something to me. Texting works. I never see your newsletters unless I go dig for them. When they come from Blackboard or whatever, I don't see them. So that's just whatever. But I didn't know that, for instance, to calculate the missed day, right, it would take until you got to 6 missed periods is 1 day. I didn't realize that. So I think that's a piece of information that could be communicated out to parents, because I thought a day was if my student actually stayed home the whole day, right? But if she goes to the orthodontist and somebody doesn't call it in and say she went to the orthodontist, and suddenly that's adding up, So anyway, I learned something there, something to consider to communicate out, because that could be a problem solver, because sometimes we just get lazy as parents. We're like, is it a big deal that like she missed 2 periods to go to the orthodontist? Apparently it is. And that could really.
Especially if it's understood.
Right. Well, and really it's just us parents not making the call to say, she's at the orthodontist, like check her braces. You'll see it when she goes back. So anyway, so that's a little thing that takes a little effort from parents, but could make an impact on, it's not going to make an impact on those that are chronically absent, but it would make an impact on the statistics for all of the kids that are taking a little time here or there. So anyway, just a thought, because it's new to me.
Can I tell you that even if a student that comes to my office during the 2nd period, we have a code that's OST
Mhm.
to let the parent know and the system know, don't send that they missed that period, they're in the office at that time.
Right.
So there's certain codes that we put in during that time period or at the end of the day, so the parent won't get that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you care, this isn't the place for it, but at the change of quarter, instead of continuing in a class, my student changed classes to some other class as an elective, but the system still had in that class. And so for 2 weeks, the system showed that she had missed that class for 2 weeks. And I didn't know how to fix it. I bet it's still out there. I bet it still shows that she didn't go to 5th period for 2 weeks. And so now I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should take a look at that. And now that I know that somebody cares more than, anyway. So, so let's see, my other question. So it doesn't matter if it's excused, because it doesn't show up on these statistics if it's excused by a parent.
And one other interesting thing, excused and unexcused, this could kind of go back to even what Peter was saying about kids that are passing classes, but they missed a lot of days. So we used to have a loss of credit policy where if you missed 11 days in a class, you lost credit for that class, and then you had to appeal to get that back. But that's against state laws, against the RCWs. But in the law, it does say that if you have an unexcused absence, you don't have the right to make up that work. But teachers are being commanded by the kids to make up that work. So if we had a really a hard and fast system that said unexcused absence, you're not going to make up the work. If we are holding hard and fast to the reasons why we're excusing absences, because really, I mean, Jamie, really, there's only a few reasons per board policy that's a excused absence. That's like a doctor's, appointment, a dentist appointment, court, and a funeral is about the only reasons that you can have an excused absence. And yet we're excusing pretty much almost anything the parent calls it in. So we really felt hard and fast, you can't make up the work if it's unexcused. If you don't have an excused reason for being absent, maybe that would curb some of the people that are, pulling their kids out to take them to lunch or, or letting them, go clothes shopping with them during the school day, whatever. There's so many reasons that kids are staying out of school that aren't really excusable reasons not being in school. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess I would question the intent of having them in school. If the intent, right. So this is similar to what Carly was asking, but for those not attending regularly, do you know the big bucket reasons?
For not attending?
Yeah, for not attending, like for the kids that just aren't showing up or have, if you've only got 60, well, that's the wrong page, but whatever the number is, 65% attending regularly. So for the 30, I can't remember the full, but anyway, for the percentage not attending, right? What are their big bucket reasons? Is it illness? Is it appointments? Is it went to the coffee stand to get another energy drink? Like, do you know for certain, like, have you looked at what the actual reasons are?
We have come in with discipline angle. We know that one student is coming in late, trying to be early, trying to get out early, trying to it added up. And once we brought the parent in, and once we continue to bring the parent in the properties, and they realized that we go across the. So because I took down the first one because I think they tried and work with us. That avenue didn't have to take so long. I think it was like, oh, since you mentioned that my son is missing so much, I'm gonna just remove them. And I don't like that, but that's one of the avenues. To answer your question, a lot of it is unexcused that the parent never calls in. Say, hey, they were sick.
And as a parent, I didn't know that it mattered that much. I really didn't. I mean, I sit here
There was an appointment
on the school board and I didn't know that.
The Becca bill says that we have 5 or more unexcused absences in a month, or 10 total in a school year. We're supposed to file. a petition.
Right.
Just having 5 unexcused absences in a month should trigger.
Well, I think a strategy of parent education could be considered. I'm not going to tell you the how, but I'm going to tell you that this parent learned something tonight. And I bet there's more like me out there who.
I think David does a good job on calling them and saying, hey, you're out. The parent called, they were out last week, an excuse, what was that about? And they'll say, oh, well, yeah, they'll bring you a note tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think what I believe the biggest problem is that we have a lot of parents that are leaving it up to their kids to get themselves to school. The parent leaves early, they go to work. It's upon the kid, whether they wake up and decide to come to school or not. It's a lot of it's put on the kid, and a lot of the kids seem to run the boost at home, and they've just, we got parents saying, I can't make my kid get up today, or, it's just a lot of kids that are left.
Moving. I don't want to, we have been on this a lot longer than I intended, but for your goal number 2, 9th grade trend. So do you know, because you have an entire goal on 9th grade on time rate, for freshmen. Do you know, like, mid-year this year, what mid-year eighth graders, what their on-track rate for ninth grade is? Or do you, like, if you were to run the statistics of eighth graders with at least one F, right? So that you can project what's coming in for the fall. So with the fall hits, and maybe there's an intervention that could happen in eighth grade to say, hey, this is what high school is like. I mean, whether that is a field trip over there sooner than the very end of school to say, this is the majors, right? We need you to come in and step up. We're setting some expectations mid-year eighth grade versus come in, like, stumble through September and October, get some grades, and then you realize, ooh, we got a problem, right? So I'm just wondering if there is a method and process or a strategy being used to project an issue and then put in some interventions before we get there. Because if you don't know till October, you've got a problem, you've already got a problem. Now you're going back.
I think that those things that we like to see in middle school, those high school classes, so in high school credit, whatever we did graduation rate. So I think that I'm always advocate about kids getting more credits earlier, and have an opportunity to get more high school credits earlier. To track that, I know I can't say we got that data to track it, because
That might be information that would be helpful to set you up for September versus having to wait till end of October to find out you got a problem.
I do know that me and John go there, been there already. Kids came up to sign up for high school classes for the eighth grade. And go the year, welcome to high school.
And I would encourage any of you to go watch Eric Dinwiddie teach the freshman success class, because
He teaches my
I truly
daughters.
believe that, I mean, if you look at our denominator, it's growing over the last 4 years, but our numbers of failure are going down. And I truly believe that freshman success class has a lot to do with it. And this next
Well, you're
year,
stealing my thunder on page 2.
it's
In
going to be a
fact-
year-long class this next year. So we put some kids that failed all of their classes. First semester is about 3 of them. We put them back in it for a second go around and then second semester. So hopefully the spaghetti noodle is going to stick in there.
So my daughter is in Dinwiddie's freshman success class, loves it. And my notes here on page 2 say yes in capital letters when you were talking about the freshman success and the tiger period where it's required for C, D, and F to go talk to that teacher. Yes, that's what I wrote. 2 exclamation points. So, but you kind of stole my thunder on that. But yeah, I think that, I mean, from my ninth graders perspective, like, it's making a difference. So just it's one student, but just know that at our dinner table, it gets talked about, and it's working. So.
Can I ask just a clarifying question real quick? Because you made a really good point, and I guess let me rephrase it in my words and make sure that I'm hearing you correctly, is your point about identifying in the middle school. So the way I receive that is additional interventions in the middle school and communication, that as this kid is transitioning, there's some sort of line of communication that says, hey, Mr. Maynard, hey, Mr. Nicely, I've got Tim. Tim really struggles in math and we've done our best, but, just identify him and know that he's got this. So maybe before that kid ever starts ninth grade, like, we're already shuffling pieces to get him, interventions and stuff like that. Are we doing that in a large part now? I'm looking at you.
Right. And yeah, the middle school is obligated to be communicating with the high school on, who's going to be on track and what the performance is. And I do commend John and Michael, because they've really made a lot of effort to reach down to the middle school.
Yeah.
For that success, or to help promote, as Director Beach is saying, welcome this, It's a whole new ballgame.
Okay, that's encouraging. So we're already doing that. Good.
You know, we do have like for that intensified algebra class, so we do look at all of their math. Every student look at their math data for the from seventh grade and also eighth grade, and that's how we identified 45 students to go into that intensified algebra. So they're getting a block algebra and algebra support based on communicating. And it's also teachers have put comments next to the student, you know, about their behaviors or about, you know, how they're acting down in middle school. And then I know Katie Lebanon, she talks, you know, we do have a high percentage of special ed students, and so she talks kid by kid, you know, with the special ed teacher down at the middle school. And I've been on that call with her, and they just go student by student and talk about the student, talk about their strengths and where they should. And I know Beth's been involved when she comes in after that, and then we refine it even more about placement for those students. So probably a good chunk of those kids coming in, and Dave gives us the top kids, because we put all of the kids that had the toughest discipline coming out of middle school, we put them in the first semester of freshman success, so we can give them, you know, a good clean start. And a couple of those, like I said, in the second semester as well. So we have had some of those levels of conversation about, you know, kids that we should put in freshman success, or we should place kids in math, and then also in special ed, looking at their supports.
Our next meeting will be middle school, so the 17th, and we got set up for vertical alignment school. So we'll continuously do that work.
Well, I will. No, I appreciate that. I'll challenge you to pull that data as often as you can. Because intervening before they get there and setting up your classes and your teachers and all that in a way that you can see the wave coming, whether it's a big one or a small one, you know what to prepare for, right? And so whatever that is, I'll let you guys decide, but I see you trying to keep your head above water on some of this. And I see your goals, and I think that rather than get them failing and try and getting them back, let's not get them there. And that's the other part. I don't think that you guys understand the presence that you have at the middle school. Like high school is a big deal, right? So when they know they're going to the majors, this is big time. And like middle school, it's sort of like, if I don't turn my homework in, well, then they just give me tomorrow in the class to do it, right? So just sort of, anyway, I feel like I'm hammering it, and it's just about setting expectations early so that they can kind of, you know, straighten up and stand tall and feel proud about heading into high school, because some of that is just feeling capable. Just realizing that, you know, maybe I've been struggling in middle school, but I'm capable. And that mindset shift makes a huge difference. So anyway, I'll just leave it there. Hold on. I had something there. Freshman success. That was the yes. So the testing doesn't matter thing. I'll tell you a lot of that from my kids, and I've had, what, 5 in the high school now. They get it from certain teachers. Certain teachers will say it, and that's what they parrot, right? And so the problem is with the students, and it's with the staff, and I'm sure you know it, but I just want you to know that, again, at my dinner table with my small sample size of 5, that's where it comes from. Or when you talked about the need for like parent volunteers and what you need for support, or if you needed volunteers for something, or you need the PTA, or you have academic needs, or how do I volunteer? I don't know how to volunteer. Like if I wanted to volunteer, would you guys even need me? I don't know. Like, so I don't know if that's a blind copy to parents. I don't know how you get it out there, but anyway, something to think about. I wrote down something for us to really look at dialing in our transportation notifications to only the right bus routes, because we are creating apathy in parents. They're hitting the button to decline. I'm hitting the button to decline because I think it's transportation telling me that bus 14 is not running. My kid doesn't take bus 14. So I think that we have an opportunity, because we're creating a problem by not dialing in those, like people are just rejecting everything that comes from the school district. 283, you're like, nope, because now I'm going to hear that the bus isn't running again. And that's not it. You're legitimately trying to get out there. So I took that as just know that I wrote that as an action item for us to consider. I don't know what our options are. I've never worked on the buses communication system, but I heard you say that it's creating a problem for you. And
Parents have told, multiple parents told me, I just hit the button.
I'm telling you, I hit the button too.
So I had to call back.
I hope you've never had to call me, but yeah, I'll admit, depending if it's 6:30 in the morning, I'm certainly hitting that button. So I think that maybe communicating these SMARTY goals out to parents, like this is important to us, missed work and putting the notes in Canvas, because when my kid legitimately is sick, we kept trying to get her to school and legitimately like, it was bad, right? So she would come home early, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, well, is there something you can work on while you're laying there on the couch? Something you could be reading? Canvas was empty. So if we can get that in Canvas, then maybe you don't have a kid coming back that is, 8 classes behind in homework and whatever. So I don't know. And then, that's transportation. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor, and based on what Carl's question was, will you verify that those PLCs are still making attendance on time part of their conversation, that they don't think that it was last year's goal? Like
Making attendance.
Carl was mentioning the goal from last year about having PLCs sort of make that an important topic for their discussion, right? And so I'm going to ask you to just go back and verify that they're still talking about it, that they're still aware.
That question right now, I don't think that in the last couple PLCs, because we have this push of last big push. We have our school is really right now. It's a lot of big things coming on.
Mhm.
With graduation checks, testing. I could tell you that. Which will be both that. I'll go back.
It could be a top reoccurring agenda item, like, you know what I mean? Just leave it on there. You don't have to talk about it, but you have to see it and go, don't forget to do this thing. All right. My last thing is this slide that Carl was asking about with the action steps for the unexcused absences. And this one. So I'm gonna ask you to look at bullet number 2 and sending the letter after 3 unexcused absences for your consideration. By that time, they're already in your system. They're already dragging down your metrics, and now you're trying to bring them back. So again, similarly, could there be a way that you, for instance, and I'll be honest, it's not my business, but then the mom and me wrote it down, so I'll just tell it to you. So I get the text, because I keep getting a text from the nutrition department saying that your student has a negative lunch balance, but it says your student and it says negative lunch balance. It doesn't actually tell me what it is, but something like that that says your Sage missed class today. And I think that text goes out, right? But then add to that, like Sage has missed X number of unexcused absences this year, right? Give me, because I would know that she missed 2 classes to go to the orthodontist. I would be surprised to know that she has 27 absences this year or something like that. And then maybe a positive, like call to action on there, like, I don't know, like attendance correlates, is so important, or something like attendance is a great thing. Like, come on, parents, like do the thing. Because if you hit up my cell phone, like I'm paying attention. So I don't know what it looks like exactly, but I will tell you, I wouldn't be surprised to know 1 or 2 periods were missed. I would be surprised when suddenly I get that total amount and I go, ooh, I had no idea. So either I have to make a call to Jamie because that's on me and I didn't excuse it, or I have a conversation with my kid because they're missing a lot more school than I realized. So anyway, those are my thoughts about that. But I think this one, sending the letter after 3 unexcused absences,
I think that's the policy, that's the.
well, then maybe but you can, I give you permission to send it more often, to intervene sooner, right?
I mean, attendance in itself is, it's a huge ball. It's a system that takes a lot of manpower. I mean, and so the manpower becomes pretty much Jamie, Michael, and myself. So when you're talking about the paperwork side of this, so. I mean,
Are you like,
it's a lot.
are you actually, somebody actually typing a letter?
Jamie said-
Okay, I'm not kidding.
Well, not the end of it. I mean, it's a system that.
It says,
Okay.
but she also said that once they get to another number, she said, actually said.
Okay, because I'm like, we pay a lot of money for different notification methods, so let's hit them all. Anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to put a bow on that too, though, just as we're thinking about it. We can keep doing all this stuff, but I mean, the core issue is that students are not finding
100%.
value or excitement in coming to class and completing the classwork, right? We can put lipstick on a pig all we want, and we can throw more letters, but obviously the letters aren't working. So like, we need to figure out like that the core issue is that no matter how much we make the teachers want the test to matter or this to matter, that like, whatever it is, the students this subset of students don't care, don't want to be here, don't find value. So how do we adjust that? You mentioned there are teachers that, students will run down to the hall and everything. And like, that's the essence of really what we're looking for is how do we make them want to be here? Because if a kid wants to be here and they want to learn, all this other stuff goes out the window, right? So.
All right, thank you
Yeah,
very
thank
much. Appreciate it.
I'm sure when you guys came in, you didn't think it'd be 2 hours long, so I appreciate your patience.
When you came in, I didn't think it was 2 hours long.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Mayor's about to do another 2 hours, don't worry.
So, my presentation is about athletics activities. I just kind of want to start. Last year, we know that we did change conferences. We had the same people in our conference, talking to people outside. It's me and John was talking yesterday. It's different how the year goes with athletics. How 1 year is great at this, and the next year they're doing something else, and that team is young and all the dynamics of that. So I'm gonna just start here, because my basic focus was student participation last year, ended up so I know you might not be able to see this. So this year in the fall, every one of our sports increased. So meaning cheer, cross country, football, JV and varsity football, girls soccer, and volleyball. I want to say that they increased to where I am looking down at the middle school now to see where the number is going to increase for next year. That's pretty big because talking to Dion, our girls soccer coach, he's expecting a big group of girls coming from 8th grade to 9th grade soccer. Also, volleyball is a pretty big group of 8th graders coming up. So I'm expecting that those numbers to increase coming up. Now, what happens between volleyball and soccer is that students choose. Some years that I want to play girls soccer, and some years I want to play volleyball. I've seen that in the past year. This past year, and we still have it. Here, all I want to say is we're going to pretty much, we're looking like we're going to have a big season. Because if you've been to a football game, we lose draw last year, a home football game. It was our cheerleaders were like just as much as we had football players. So we're going to split 2 squads up, and we're going to have a JV and a varsity. talking to Peggy, and she's excited about that because the more participation you have, the more things you have. It was pretty awesome. I'm gonna go into that and say that basically with them was their participation in their community. So if you have more girls, they're also the fundraising is big. I kind of chuckled at that because I was just in an argument with somebody talking about how expensive cheer was. And I was like, well, we're cheaper than soap. You know, we're cheaper than here. It's expensive, but we're trying to be economic as much as we are at that. Football, I'm kind of worried about the numbers going down. That's the only sport that I think I'm kind of worried about the numbers decreasing, but not much. We talk about soccer. You can see girls soccer was one of our few teams that made the conference tournament. They were very well organized. Also, they were large, and we have a lot of returns coming back from soccer. Cross country was awesome because we had a full girls team, a female athlete team, plus boys. I think it was 18 males and 8 females, so 5 females make up the cross country team, and we made that goal. And we have all those returned. We have all returned except one, return. Volleyball, I want to say volleyball was very young. Coming up this year, we're going to have a new coaching staff, and we're going to line you to see open vacancies right now. Volleyball, we had over 40 girls, so we had 3 teams. I want to say for the sportsmanship awards, I started off this conversation. Last year football award, we had 11 people on the all conference, and this year we had 2. So that's the change of the seasons. Girls soccer awards, we had pretty much the same, or we had 1 less than last year. Winter sports were, I want to say, our most smoothest transition this year as far as athletics. There's no, compared to last year when we had to cancel a lot of games due to COVID, because it was inside, we were wearing masks. It was a lot of contact tracing and games being canceled. Winter sports were pretty much smooth. Also, looking at the winter sports numbers, we increased in that as well. So in winter sports, that boys basketball, we increased by 1, girls basketball, we increased by 3, cheer, we still increased. Cheer squad in the fall and winter are different because it's 2 different tryouts. So wrestling was our biggest jump. And I want to say wrestling was night and day compared to this year and last year. We had 18 students last year, we had 33 this year, almost up to 40. It wasn't grades, not making the weight management system. Basketball, I'm just going to talk about next year. Boys basketball, we are returning most of our players. Very young, very inexperienced. So making sure that people are playing major roles this year is a success. I want to say one thing about our boys basketball coach, Aaron. He really is focused on, he has some trials and tribulations with himself, losing a lot of games this year. I want to say I've talked to him a lot, talked to him off the edge a lot. He's really trying to force the summer. He feels a little hardened that when I shut the gym down in the summertime, but he's happy that middle school gets available so they can practice summertime. And this year, I want to go aside. This year, due to construction, plant construction, we will have some stuff shut down. And our fields are, you know how our fields are with our community, our school. It's gonna be a challenge to tell the community that we are in construction. Whatever we're doing is for the community, better for the community. So if they can't get a field, or they wanna go, they don't wanna go to high school, they wanna go to the high school, tell them to work with us. They're doing this. Our girls basketball team was really another team like our girls soccer. And it's nothing new because some of our girls soccer team play on girls basketball. They also went to our conference tournament. And our conference tournament is big because it's 14 teams. And if you make the tournament, you have an opportunity to go to state. We play other division. We also had a conference player of the year. Our junior Ray Ferguson. Let's see her. Should have seen her slide. It's a slide. And she was a conference player of the year. She's also out in the front. You drive up, and you see our students kind of displaying with our the flag pole in the front. Ray Ferguson is one of the students up there, along with our academic students. Boys wrestling. Coach Sean Burke, he was the coach of the year. We always mess with him at the school about, we always call him coach of the year since he won coach of the year. Coach Sean Burke is gone now. He's out on deployment. Our wrestling team was they were the conference champions. So they also had a tradition started between Granite Falls and Sultan. So you see this here, this is the actual wrestling belt that we created called TNT. And there was Turks and Tigers battle. And this year the Tigers won because Turks only had about 10 wrestlers. And we also, Sean Burke kind of implemented that. We also implemented the night we went to the wrestling night at Sultan, kind of like the eye in the sky where we wrestled in the dark, but wrestled with no light on. He brought that back again too. So Sean Burke, we messed with him about being the coach of the year, but he put it on hard and soul into the program. And the spring sports is going on, so I didn't put anything about spring sports because our spring sports are still going on right now. But I want to let you know that about baseball. Baseball we declined from 24 to 16. Softball we went down 1. Softball last year we had a lot of seniors, so we have a lot of younger players moving up. And tennis we went down, but I want to talk about our tennis team as well. Our tennis team is they're growing fast, and they're getting good fast. They're all actually going to the tournament. Our athletics are moving up. I think that if you get more and more students in athletics or in activities, like just came to the play, that attendance rate will go up as well. I want to say last year our vision for the program was the field. We got that accomplished. But it's nice they're not going to take credit for that. That's everybody. That's a whole community thing. We got that accomplished. Our field. So that was a part of the last year slides. This year we're just trying to get the field goal post look just as nice as the new field. So we talking to Dion and said that we're going to pressure wash the field goal post. And hopefully I can borrow some money from Marshall and get it painted. So, that's one of the things for this upcoming year. Also, the gymnasium cleaning and the floor finishing. Talking to Dion, our high school gym is on the only floor kind of finished this year. So that's why we kind of shut it down. We said everything's the finish. Our high school gym floor, everybody wants to use it like their football field. Everybody wants to. But it takes its toll throughout the cost of finishing that. Our coaches additions this year that really helped out with Sean Burke. He transferred from an assistant to the head coach of wrestling. He's also my interim baseball coach right now. Chris McDonald, he's the assistant wrestling coach, track and football coach. All these people came up from last year. K through Shield. Unfortunately, we're losing her, but she is one of the big parts of our tennis team. As good as it is. So coming into the spring, well, right now, this is what we need to be open. This is the positions that are open. We're looking for the volleyball coach, varsity and JV. So we start interviews next month. The window closes on Friday for applicants. Varsity baseball coach, it's posted, but I will start interviews in June after the season. And our head varsity tennis, like I just said, she's going back to school, so I'll be getting that job posted in the summer. Looking at things we added as far as technology additions, added bid swap. I want to say that was cost effective. If you ever heard of Huddle football? Huddle was about $7,500, just one aspect of building for basketball and football. Bid swap was $1,500 for all our sports. And if you want to pay extra $500 when we do the stats breakdown, that's what pretty much, that's less than almost $8 grand if you spend it for Huddle for just 2 sports. So that's why we went to bid swap. GoFan is something that we'll implement next year that the community will be a part of, because we're all going to GoFan ticketing system. So no more of the card sliders at the football games. You can GoFan, you pay online, you show that you can get a button. We've done this GoFan before. We'll launch this again in a couple of weeks for our track conference championship. And final forms, I kind of want to focus on final forms because all of us in here are on final forms. As board members, we have a final forms account because if we look at WIA and transfer everybody else, everybody's name into final forms. Final forms is probably going to get tired of hearing this because this summer I'll be the one making sure that you have all of your certificates or your first aid card. If you don't have it, this is what you need to do to put it in CPR first aid card for everyone, because WIA is looking to make sure that they're compliant with final form on the athletic standpoint. Final form does all kinds of things, but athletics, that's what we have. And just want you to know that we just completed the ASB reporting at the business office. Also completed the athletic participation with WIA. Next report is complete. It's done June 30th. I'll complete that before June 30th. I'm going to do that before summer break. And our student athletic survey will come out on the 2nd week of May. It'll come out on Wednesday, and I'll open it up to where we have it a month, where all students, athletes, take that survey. So that's reported for Beth's office, so we can have those reported for ASB and OSBI. Visions for me on the athletic end is making sure this summer Final Forms operating and we're in good standing with the state as for WIA. Also, visions for me is also just following through on and helping out and chipping in, like Carl says. If we need help with the gym cleaning, being here for gym cleaning. I know last summer, Dion was pulling everybody, including all those college students, to come in and paying and do all this stuff. So if you do need help with something, I just want to follow through and making sure that I can help. That gym is, I need it to look nicer. So what we'll do is we'll take down the old stuff and try to keep up most recent stuff. Any questions for me?
Board?
The turf, that's coming along nicely. We're good to go on that and set up.
Yes. Follow up on the turf. I'll go to the track first. Last week, Bingen track came in, they walked through, kind of showed them, doing the measurements, and kind of showed them we needed and what we wanted as far as the track. So they're doing the measurements. We should see that this week. I know that we should be finalized. I'm waiting on the last thing, the start date for the turkey. So, send that email, and when I know it's been a email between myself, John, and Marshall. So that date, what we want is the day after graduation, meaning the Monday after graduation.
Any other questions? So I'm going to ask you to go back 30 seconds because I heard you caught my attention, but I was also looking at my screen. I heard you say you needed help.
So for the, so you see how like the vision, this,
Yeah.
so the gym.
Is this a volunteer help or is this
this
a
is
hire?
community service hours. So I'm gonna try to get kids with help as well.
Okay.
So this is stuff that, just tedious stuff that I just kind of.
Is this something if we were to ask those parents that we talked about before that aren't part of the association that isn't there yet? But is this something that they could help with as well? Like we could put out the ask to parent volunteers and students, or is it only students?
Parent volunteers, it's really about beautification as far as like, I know baseball fields. We have a problem with the deadlines. So we just, when baseball's up, we just want to make sure we clean up, do whatever we need to do. So when the next season comes, we'll have to block it, clean up.
Right. Okay.
And Madam Chair, before we get too far out of the gate, we do need to be mindful of our work with our association.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
certainly be in conversation with them.
I didn't realize. I thought this was, well, I thought when he was saying he needed a volunteer, I was like,
Right.
oh,
I can actually see one.
So
gotcha.
one question, because we talked a lot about data in the first presentation, and just one thing that crossed my mind while we were talking, like, I mean, it looks like you're running a great sports program. Do we have an idea how many of the low-income students participate in the sports comparatively? Or students that are having trouble in school participate in our sports programs?
I can give you the data for the low income that we pay for play. I want to say I didn't, it was being reported last week, it was 35% out of that 207. So can't do that math on my, I got you, John, he's the math guy for me. No, it was 37% out of that 207 from the low income. Participating in sports. It's some laws about the change in that. So we kind of talking to Marshall and talking to other people like building about laws that are going to change with low income, ESB, what is ESB, and big play. So I haven't got to for that, but that 37% of the 207. There was another part of the question.
Well, I was just curious as to the kids that are struggling in school, how many of those actually participate in sports?
I can tell you that of the students that participate in sports, struggling in school academically,
Yes.
we have on average 4 students that are eligible every time we do a grade change. There's some, on average, there's some sports like softball that does not have a student on grade. Have not had a student on grade check all year. We've had some sports, but softball has 18 runs compared to track that has 49 that have 8. You know,
right?
And that's something that we look at. But also, that's something we give them an opportunity to do with weekly grade checks. And that's not a bad thing, because some of our coaches, it's always so what the report comes out that your grade check, well, I'm already on one. So because my coach, so that's it. I hope
That helps.
and thank you for saying that, because spring sports season has been my It is always is because of rain and canceling games.
Right.
That's one of the biggest stressors for a lot of spring sports.
Oh, yeah.
Listen,
Thank you very much. Thanks for staying. Appreciate the time.
thank you.
Thank you.
You gotta unearth the agenda.
Building condition report.
Building condition report for Monte Cristo and Granite Falls High School.
So we're just, we're required to, from OSPI to submit an official building condition report for certain buildings every year. And we have to submit it to the board for review, and then we have to sign off a program that says that it was reviewed. We're having very in-depth reviews going on with BLRB, and they did a really in-depth review with the board a few months ago about building conditions. So this is simply a compliance thing that I had to present these two buildings to the board. It hasn't changed since what you saw with BLRB, but it was just a mandatory requirement for us to present these.
So everything in here is dated 2021 on the comments. So we just have no updates to it.
Right, BLRBs, so it doesn't require an official update for another 3 years, I think. But BLRB is working on updating all these things for us right now.
Okay. All right. Board, any questions?
What were you talking about 21, by the way?
Oh, this, when you look at it, all the comments are from 2021. Like I don't see any updates for 2023, like 22 or 23 on there. It's dated 22, 23 at the top. But I just didn't see any updates for that. So I was curious, but it sounds like BLRB, we paid them to, they're gonna make the updates, but they didn't make them yet. So we're just gonna submit the form we have.
Right,
All right. All right.
You need a motion?
no.
Right.
It's just kind of we have to just attest that we allowed the board to review them. We, meaning me and Dion, have to just put a board date into there's a program on OSPI's website that we just said put a board date in, and these were seen by the board on this date.
All right, next we have the financial condition update.
And I submitted a kind of a memo form document of where I think an update of our financial condition, and I highlighted some problems that we're experiencing, increased special education costs, increased demand for the alternative high school. I got a shift from enrollment from the Granite Falls High School to the alternative high school. And I think that John and Michael mentioned that it's been 87 students in the last year and a half have shifted from the high school to alternative high school. And inflation is hitting us like it is everybody else. These three things are not unique to Granite Falls. All of our districts are experiencing the increased student needs coming out of COVID, the incredibly high inflationary rates, and trying to balance. One thing many other districts are experiencing is just loss of enrollment overall. We're just seeing shift in enrollment that we're trying to balance. And then additionally, we identified that inflation next year is going to be high as well. They've already released the inflationary numbers for next year. And so there's going to be $600,000 in unemployment salary increases next year. And then there's the potential loss of several grants that Crossroads has been using this year to help meet student needs. And that totals about $300,000. There's the likely loss of a learn to return grant that we have this year that's helping us pay for a lot of our extra nursing costs. So because of these things, we think we need to cut our budget by somewhere between $1.2 and $1.5 million next year. And we have a solid plan ready to present, but it doesn't require any risks. We have some open positions, so it's right sizing staff, moving staff to where the student demand is, reducing some district administrative staff through attrition, and really working on limiting the extra time that
is costing the district a significant amount of money by staff. So by doing these things, we can reduce our budget by between 1.1 and $1.4 million. There is still the risk of special ed costs continue to increase. I know there's, just in talking with the buildings today, there's a pretty big queue of students waiting to be identified right now. So that's kind of a significant risk. And I know that the idea behind this document was to trigger a much larger conversation at a study session. So maybe for me, it would help to understand what kind of data you would like to see in the study session, how deep you want to go, like specific positions, where certain shifts would happen, those kind of, what would you like to see in the study session?
Quick question, pretty big queue. What number, like some idea? What we're
I
facing?
heard that somewhere between 20 and 30 students at just at Mountain Way right now are kind of in the queue for being identified.
Just a Mountain Way, okay. And then any from other schools,
I haven't heard from other schools. Mountain Way tends to be where
the majority.
the trigger point is right now, because a lot of these are new kids that haven't been in school ever before.
Mhm.
So,
So they ask Marshall, I just want to be clear is, obviously, we're going to speak about this deeper at a study session, is what kind of information do you want the board to provide at that study
What would
session?
you like us to put forward?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I meant that way.
How deep of a dive do you want to go into what our plan is? I mean, we can do it line item by line item, what our plan is, or we could be a little more general.
And I know you're asking off the cuff.
Yeah.
Certainly, we'll take input over the next couple of
Right,
days,
right,
so.
yeah. So I know that I talked to Dr. Middleton. I had a few questions that I was hoping to have answered, and we can do it at that study session if you want to prepare that. For the additional 64, 65, you had a number in here, additional special education students that were identified since we first started our special education kind of deep dives in October. Can you, Beth, or whoever, categorize that? There was a slide at our previous study session that sort of had the big buckets of kind of
Yeah.
behavioral, medical, there were sort of some big buckets. So if we've added 64 students, that it has caused us to go from 1 million or 1.2 to now 1.5 over. And you guys can tell me, think about it, look at the numbers and tell me if I'm right. But if we're just identifying this late in the year, that makes me think that the amount of services that are going to be given wouldn't likely get us to a safety net number that would be reimbursable. So that identifying that 64, additional 64 this far into the school year makes it almost certain they won't qualify. So it'll all be sort of out of pocket, or mostly out of pocket and
Right.
unreimbursable by safety net. So that makes us think about our strategy and our identification strategies going forward to do that. If we have to do it earlier in the year, because when we do it late.
Well, I think
Yes,
oftentimes those smaller, those identifications include pieces of service.
Yeah.
That wouldn't qualify for safety net no matter when you did it, or even if it's a big task like a one-on-one.
Yeah.
We still have to pay $37,000 for that one-on-one.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So.
Get anything.
So for us, our strategy in our district is, if we're going to even qualify, know in the back of our mind that if we see a need, let's fill the need so that we can get to the place where we might be able to recover it. Because if we kick that can too far forward into the school year, we still have to fund it either way, right? But we aren't funding at a level that we can recover in safety net. So that's just a thought for strategy. My other ask for special education is, I don't remember seeing in the procedure, so this is an update to the procedure that's sort of in work right now, a way that if a teacher identifies, because we said at the last meeting, we were going to review the plans as they come due. But if teachers identify somebody that could be, maybe doesn't necessarily need services anymore, but we're not reviewing until the next due date, right? Then maybe I think we need to add into that procedure an exit process. Like, what does that look like? If a teacher, if a parent, if somebody wants to, they think the student doesn't need services, how do they exit the program, right? I don't remember seeing that in there, and I think that's important because we're adding 64. Our staff is a limited number, right? I mean, that's a heavy load, so. And I'm still gonna reiterate my concern about a single point of failure there, Beth, for you. So if you have a new strategy or an updated strategy on how to avoid putting all the birds directly on your desk, we're here for it. So I think that was there was the exit strategy, the identifying the big buckets, and
There was one that we talked about regarding HR,
oh,
did you
that's
wanna-
what it is, yes.
and I haven't had a chance to.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna put you a little bit on the spot with HR. So my question here, and I'll just give you my quick background. When I have, like, I have rentals. When I have a rental that I need to put out there, I make a posting, I put it one place, but it gets sent to many places, apartments.com, whatever, lots of places for the listing. So I wondered if we have a procedure of when we have a listing for say an ed psych that we have a contract for, so we're posting that, but then we also are trying to direct hire so that we could save, I think we said $60,000. Do we have a procedure of which places that goes to? Like, do we put it in, or do we have a person that's going out and like posting at different places? Because if we don't have that procedure, then I think we need to have that procedure, because each of those direct hires was about $60,000, and that would be really helpful in a tight budget. Those were my three thoughts.
So for me, this is, and I'm extremely oversimplifying it for the board, because what I realized during the last one as well is, at least from my perspective, there's a lot of questions and conversations. I know you get curious, or I know I got curious too, but procedure, right? I think a lot of these conversations are getting way too deep into the procedure. And like, I'm outcome focused, right? So the outcomes that I'm focused on, student outcomes and cost, and those in that order, right? And so I expect for my expectations for going forward, I expect the plan that's being proposed to address both of those in that order, right? That's why it's being proposed to.
Talking about sped, just to make sure.
Yeah, sped. What I want to see, in addition to what I'm sure is already being prepared, right? So you're going to come and say, this is what we're going to do. I have no reason to disagree or question, right? If you're putting a plan together, that think that you could implement it. But what I do want to see is, if for some reason that strategy is not working, because I'm not expecting people to be perfect, right? This is all new territory for pretty much everybody here. But what I want to see is, if we start to stray from that, what is the process to evaluate, redesign, and re-implement quickly, right? So if we say, here's the plan, and we start down that pathway, and a month from now or 2 weeks from when it started, or whenever's a solid amount of time, we as the board sit here and say, we are not increasing student outcomes or reducing costs. We need to reevaluate. What's that process look like? That's mainly what I'm curious about, because once again, far be it from me to question any plan that you have in place to implement. But if it's not working, we need to know, how are we evaluating that? What's the process in the redesign? What are we tweaking? And then how are we implementing it? Agility, 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 right? That's more of what I'm interested in seeing. So come to us with a plan. It's more of like a show and tell, right? Like, this is what we're doing. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm just more of like, okay, in 2 weeks from now or a month from now, like, give us a timeline on, if we do not accomplish this by this time, then we need to change something. Okay, great. So then in a month time, did we hit this outcome and did we reduce these costs? If yes, then great, let's continue down the path. It's a great plan. If no, what do we need to adjust and why? So that's more of what I'm interested in seeing at a high level.
Marshall, this was really good because it helped me quantify kind of the challenges that we have, and I appreciate it. I mean, some of these numbers are, oof. One of the things I'd like to talk about at a deeper level, and I don't know if we've talked about really at a board level, is the impact that transferring students to Crossroads has kind of fiscally. I guess I intuitively knew about it, but I guess I didn't really think about that realistically. We're creating situations where we've set staffing levels based upon a certain enrollment. And with that large number of students that was just discussed, they're transferred to Crossroads. And I guess let me preface the statement with Crossroads is they are amazingly awesome at what they do, getting students that are credit deficient back on track, engaging with relationships with kids. Crossroads is literally a lifeline for some kids to fully seeing educational outcomes that are significantly better. So none of this is negative or anything, but I guess I'm in that discussion. I guess I would like for us to have a discussion about how do we control that, because I'm realizing now that we're creating situations where now all of a sudden we are potentially significantly overstaffed at the high school because we've transferred these large gluts, and those teachers we have contracts with, we have an obligation with, right? I mean, they're finishing the year, whether we have 20 kids in their class or 1 kid in their class, right? We're going to have to find something to do. And now we're mid-year having to hire or do something, pay overage or something in the Crossroads potentially for all of the extra kids. So I think there needs to be some sort of discussion. I don't know what the solution is, right? I don't know if that's, some sort of guardrails on enrollment or something that allows us to better kind of manage that so that we don't have this. Because when I see that 300,000, and this isn't pointed necessarily to anyone, but this to me kind of glares of lack of a process, agility, an agile process that goes, oh, okay, here's, this is happening. Here's how we're going to pivot without just kind of going, oh, well, I guess we're going to need 3 more teachers, hire 3 more teachers and stuff. So I'd like to kind of talk through kind of what the admin team thinks is a responsible way of putting in a process to kind of control that in a better way.
And side note too, Marshall, I love this format. The narrative, having a narrative behind the numbers is a lot more digestible.
Well, yes, I guess you could pat Carl on the back because.
What?
Example.
I did. Oh, I don't need that, buddy. I don't need that.
Look at your face. You better call me out.
But yeah, narrative format, fantastic. So.
The other thing I don't, just real quick, and again, by no means to harp on a Crossroads, but when I read the grants lost at Crossroads, I'm like, ooh, is that because we didn't apply for them?
No,
or
they're 1-year grants.
Okay.
So there's uncertainty whether they'll be available again next year. Right now, it looks like they might not, but there could be other grants that we can apply for. One of the grants is paying for the 9th grade academy, for instance, where they've identified a large number of high-risk 9th graders and started them out in Crossroads to help them have a better foundation for success. And that's a federal grant, I believe, that is requiring a lot of reporting and updating on it. It's like a test environment for the federal government to look at how this all can work. And they gave Crossroads a grant for, off the top of my head, I think it's about $180,000 from this academy, and that's no guarantee that it'll be back next year.
Okay. You don't have to answer this question now. We can answer it at the study session because I certainly don't want to make this a huge long meeting, but one of the things that when you turn on the news and you see a lot of districts that are having to do reductions in staff and do all of these, unfun things, it's usually for one of 2 big reasons, right? An enrollment loss obviously makes sense, or the reality that they took ESSER funds, right? They took one-time funds and they hired people. right? And now that that money's going away, who's going to continue to pay for that? So the only reason I say that is I'd like to have a discussion, when we get fund or these grants and kind of these one-time things, are we hiring people, right? Because I just don't want to make sure that we aren't falling into the same sort of traps.
And that's a good question. With the ESSER funds, that was not the case, except, with interventions, it was not, we knew that it wasn't going to be sustainable. It was going to be for this X amount of time. But with grants like Ninth Grade Academy, there is a risk. And we hope that is renewable.
Right.
But your question was a good one. It was not about anything wrong that was done at the school. It really was a one-year gig, and hopefully it will be renewable. And we certainly would be applying for it.
And I guess and maybe I'm lumping on something, I don't want to create an apple too big, but, as a board member, when we're reviewing and, personnel and hiring people, I guess it's never necessarily clear to me how we're paying for that person, right? So I guess, and again, we don't have to go deep into this now, but if we're hiring staff based upon a grant that we don't know if it's going to continue, maybe we need a better way to identify that. Just go, hey, just so that you know, right? This we're paying for this person partly, fully, whatever out of a grant, just so that, I don't know, we can all digest that more, because the problem that we have, just like we're seeing here, if that grant goes away and we like that thing, that means we're paying out of our pocket for that thing, right? Whereas, I don't know, maybe, I'm not saying that we wouldn't do it, but maybe there's a little bit more deliberation that needs to happen. So just throwing that out there, and maybe we could talk about that at the study session. That's all I've got.
Any other comments? Perfect. So next, we thank you, Marshall. And next we'll move to, let's see, the superintendent report.
I have about 5 things I'll go through pretty quickly, and it was mentioned already, but the high school play last weekend was just amazing. And we spend a lot of time, all schools spend a lot of time talking about their sports teams, but the arts play such an important role for students as well. And that's for some students, that is their niche. And it was just really well done. It was a full-length play. So hats off to Trudy and her cast for the work that went into that. And I know there were a lot of other staff members behind the scenes, but just an excellent play. So really proud of the work that they did. Tomorrow, the Washington Association of School Administrators, our region 109, is presenting awards. So every district in that region gives awards to whether it has to do with student achievement or community leadership, and schools or districts can, nominate, 2 to 4 people to recognize. And so tomorrow our district is recognizing Trudy Sullivan and Eric Dinwiddie for the number of years that they've been involved with the food drive. But we've also submitted Tom Dalton for the work, especially these last 18 months, working on our school safety and how involved and what a priority he has made safety in our schools. So we're looking forward to that celebration. Of course, all the districts in Snohomish will be there with their nominees as well. Let's see, we mentioned kindergarten roundup already. That's on the 2nd, and board members, you're welcome to come. I know that Mountain Way always appreciate your presence, even for just 20 minutes, half an hour, that'd be great. We do have key communicators tomorrow night at 6 p.m. This has been one of those committees that has not taken off as well as we had hoped this year. And I know that it is a time commitment, but key communicators are those folks, our stakeholders that they're paying attention to social media, listening to what's going on in the community, they bring this to our committee and say, you know what, Josh, Melanie, maybe we need to get a communication out about this, or let's think of a communication plan for such and such. We have 2 more meetings this year. We did modify it this year so that not only are we talking about those issues, but we've rotated it to each school where someone from cabinet presents on their department, and then that principal of the school shares a little bit about their school. And that's, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but just to help educate the committee members. But as I said, what started out with, sort of a nice list of people, it's been a little bit harder committee to get people to come, but we'll continue that, and that's tomorrow night. Let's see. Carl mentioned the facility master plan. That was an awesome committee meeting last night. That was our second one. Our third one is on May 9th, but the one that you might be really interested in is on May 17th. There'll be a community forum in the Commons, Crossroads Commons, and basically BLRB architects will be just sharing with community members what has been going on so far. Again, it's all about sharing what our facility needs are, what our educational adequacy and those needs are, as well as considering our demographics. And they are not coming in with any sort of agenda. They're just laying out the issues to that committee, and they are wrestling with it. And I think on the 17th, they'll probably have some possible ideas to share with the community. And then the last item I have is in the personnel report tonight. We have a resignation. And, when someone has devoted their entire career over 35 years to education, that's to take notice and celebrate a career that has been dedicated to teaching and coaching, leadership. And so I do want to publicly thank Kevin for his service throughout his career to students in Arizona as well as in Washington, and thank him for his service in Granite Falls, and really highlight the last couple of years. We charged him with helping our CTE program get on the map even more through just community awareness. We wanted to work on the communication between middle school programs and high school programs. And I'm pleased the work that he has done in that area. But I know there'll be other chances to say thank you, but I did want to mention that tonight because that is part of our packet. So thank you.
Thank you. Board, any questions? Any other questions for Dr. Middleton? Okay, next, district reports. WIAA.
Nothing from me. Mr. Maynor did a pretty solid update on sports.
Perfect. Ledge report.
Yeah, let the community go first. That way
okay.
I can go
Sure.
through mine quick. Last.
Well, Dr. Middleton kind of covered some of the things that I was going to say about things coming up like kindergarten roundup. And there's the Voices of Youth, and there's a bunch of stuff coming up as we approach the end of the year, and that will be in my report at our next meeting as we get closer to those things. But the one thing that I did want to comment about and talk about is something that's been going on with Dr. Manson, myself, and our family engagement board. And our last meeting was amazing, and we are coming up with an amazing roadmap. So you were talking about when they were doing their report of how do I know where to volunteer and stuff like that. And that is something that will be going out at the beginning of the next school year, is a roadmap that parents have everything right in front of them of how they can be involved and where to go and who to talk to. And it's a really exciting thing that we're working on. And there's just some other things that are in the works, and we would love for parents to join us on the board. Our meetings are every other month or every 2 months, and it's just really exciting, the things that are happening and the balls that are rolling. So if anybody is interested in joining, they can send myself or Karen an email, and we can give them all that information.
All right, I'll go real quick. So legislative session officially ended on Sunday, and there were certainly some good outcomes for the education system of Washington State. I don't want to start with a negative, but I'll just get out of the way. There was not any change to regionalization, whole and part. Specifically our regionalization, or really regionalization as a whole. They essentially just kind of kicked the can down the 4-year road. So Granite Falls will continue to be the only district that we physically touch that will have a 12% regionalization will continue to be Darrington, and every other district will continue to have at least an 18% regionalization. So not great. I was reminded a couple of times that, these types of changes, they happen slow and then they happen fast, right? So I guess we're at the slow part, and then hopefully, one day magically kapoof, there'll be some sort of fix or something here. So I'll look forward for that day, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. So I'll just go through a couple of things that should help us here in Granite, some of which we're still trying to figure out. They haven't released the calculator so that Marshall can go through and kind of update and say, okay, here's the things. Certainly one of the positive things, it's not as good as we would have hoped, but glass half full, not half empty. The sped cap was increased from 13.5 to 15. As Marshall says, we're probably around like 20 or so. So there's some help there that financially that's going to help us. They did finally codify IPD and COLA increases, so that'll be good. Dual credit offerings were solidified, school meal offering. So they did forward the ball on free school meals. There's still some debate. Marshall and I were talking about yesterday on if we fall into this really now, they've basically changed the criteria where you have to have, I believe it's 40% free and reduced lunch to qualify for the meals. We're not sure quite yet. More to come on that. For our students in the high school, the fees, they eliminate the college and the high school fees, so that's good too. So some things in the operational budget, they did provide some additional money to salary increases and stuff like that, which is good. And I'm certainly not short-changing that. However, going back, the reason why I started with regionalization is that even if we get an increase, right, the state says, hey, teachers in this tier, they get an increase, right? Oh, great. Everyone, that's certainly good for teachers. But then when you go, okay, district comparative to district, that's when you start plopping in regionalization, and the state is going to pay more for every other district that touches us based upon their assigned regionalization factor than us. So certainly, I'm not sure the boats will rise, right? The sea will rise, people will make more money, but the divide that the state funds between us allows to happen between us and adjacent districts is there's nothing that's going to happen to that positively to decrease that. So that kind of is what it is. I could talk for an hour on that, but I won't. As I said, regionalization, operation budget, they are providing some additional money to people that are going to lose some funding for LEA. Some people were decreasing regionalization, so they have thrown in some money for districts that are going to be phased down. So say that you're going from a 18 to like a 12% regionalization because your enrollment changed, your calculated cost of living change. So they are going to allow them to kind of infuse some money, kind of ease that burden for them. So I guess that's good. And then the only other thing that I wanted to say is that they did provide some money to for urgent repairs, and no one's been able to really tell me what qualifies as an urgent repair, and it's only like $11 million, $12 million or so statewide. But I'm told that maybe there's some money there that we could get for an urgent repair. As we're having the conversations with facilities and stuff like that. So basically, from a now standpoint, obviously everyone's gotten kind of gone home. Now we start talking about next year. Certainly one of the things on the docket for next year is, sorry to say it again, start to continue the conversation about regionalization, updating the STARS formula, additional school and safety money that they've kind of talked about and stuff. So those are likely going to be focuses of WASDA coming into the next legislative session. So that's basically it. Questions? Okay.
All right, thank you. I assume we have no items from the floor. Unfinished business, second reading to amend policy 6210, authorization and control. Discussion?
Yeah, so we talked about this last time. Obviously, this was the board has been discussing about putting in some more kind of controls on that. One of the things that came up, I guess I just want to verify, because I know we had a lot of conversation about last time, Marshall, about specific situations where the board has approved a contractor hiring someone that for some reason that person leaves or whatever, and we have to kind of hire someone else in this emergency position. And I just want to make sure what I heard is that the admin team can do that. HR, you guys can do that. We have a 30-day window that we can pull that contract. And so, and obviously we don't have a stretch all calendar year of 30 days in between. So that'll come back in front of the board and the board will go, yes, we're still cool with that. And we're still good. And if for some reason, this person was, I don't know, ran over a kid the day before. I don't know why my mind went to something horrible, but they did something horrible. We still have the ability to kind of pull that contract from them or something like that. Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. And I think we all agreed that the $20,000 was all right and stuff like that. And I'm looking at everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I have a small thing on this and I'm hoping it's not a big deal. For the sentence that says this policy applies to all contracts to which the district is a party, except that approval by the board. I hope we can change that to except where approval by the board of directors is required regardless of value. Other than that, right?
This policy applies to all contracts to which the district
And
is a
then maybe
party.
there should be some punctuation in
Except
there
that
before we start the
approval
list, but that's
by
a
the
miss.
board of directors is required regardless of value.
Except where approval by the board of directors is required, right? Am I reading it differently?
I actually don't understand that sentence. Hold on. The policy applies to all contracts to which the district is a party, except that approval by the board of directors is
The word
required.
that is what's throwing you off. Substitute the word where and read it again.
Where for accept or where for that? Or take that out?
Insert where, remove except. Or I'm sorry, remove that. Oh my gosh, it's so late.
So actually move except and that. So
No,
this
no, no.
policy,
This policy applies to all contracts to which the district is a party, except where approval by the board of directors is required regardless of value. Right? Help me out. Does that make less sense? I've been up for a lot of hours, like.
no, I think you're right. Yes.
Okay.
So essentially that is saying this applies to all contracts at that $20,000 level, except where we have something in some other policy that says, no, the board this is for $10, but the board has to approve it is what I'm reading.
Well,
Right?
and
If we
you finish
changed
it, it
except
says-
where.
Or you can say except when, or whatever. But the word that is weird and it doesn't make that sentence make sense. So
I think if you
anyway.
remove a bunch of the middle.
20 minutes on it,
You
but
remove a bunch of the middle stuff, you read it, except that approval by the board is required by law. Like if you just remove all the, or except where, I think it's the same outcome. But
cool. We'll just leave it because now I'm tired.
No, I'm okay
It
with
doesn't
it.
make sense to me as it is, but I really.
All of our policies are living documents. All of our policies are living documents, so I'm fine with making the modification of changing that to where. And then if we feel like we need to make another change, we can look at it again.
Bring it up.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve policy 60, the second reading for policy 6210 with a modification in line paragraph 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, sentence 4, changing accept that to accept where. So removing that and putting where approval by the board of directors, blah, blah, blah.
I will second.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Let's see, new business, request for proposal, superintendent search firm discussion.
Yes, so sorry to just jump in here. Hold on, I'm pulling up the. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to talk about is as I was kind of reading this, I was unsure of the correct dates. So I think that's other than the other thing. By the way, I just full disclosure, I found this, we modified this, another district had something similar. I was like, oh, this would be great to just kind of clarify. So the other thing, I guess I just wanted the board to make sure that they were okay or we need to add it is the expectations of the consultant. As well as the expectation of the consultant and the dates.
My only concern is that it says we need to have them by Tuesday, May 2nd, and that's in 4 business days. Like,
It's not
how are
nearly
we-
enough time.
How are we sending this out and how,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, the
is
date.
that enough time? Like, that seems really quick.
So when do we feel like,
I think you want to give them, well, I guess, let me start here. Dr. M, you talked about the perfect process that you went through at another district where they started early and got out early. So just bearing in mind, going into the summer, our 1 week, our 1 meeting a month transition and stuff like that. When do we want a superintendent, them already kind of going out and feeding us superintendents, because maybe we can work back from that date.
And that's in the yellow highlighted. And so my recommendation is that December meeting, you could approve someone. So working backwards, you would likely do final interviews, maybe the first week of December, and then be able to take it to the board for formal approval at that one and only December board meeting. So then going backwards, that means during the fall, that's when your search firm is busy with community forums and reporting to you. I think it's all very doable. So now that gets us to when do you want an RFP back? This is a great time because they're coming off of their spring season. And so you could turn around something in 3 weeks.
And this is just the RFP for the firm, right?
Yeah, so
That's right.
We move that Tuesday.
So you could by mid-May or maybe the 20th of May, have RFPs to you. And then turn around and do something. Interview of, whatever firms you want. First part of June, and hire somebody.
So here's what I was looking at. Our board meeting in May, our second one is on the 24th. So okay, yeah, you're right. So the reason I put the second was because I was like, oh gosh, if we get it like the day before, actually, I don't know why I put the second, because we don't meet the first meeting until May the 10th. So I wonder if we could say, I mean, it's not much more time, or like Monday or Tuesday,
The 8th or 9th.
the 8th or the 9th.
Yeah.
And then we could approve it at that next meeting on Wednesday.
So my question is then, like, if it says in here something about that date, right? And then they have to present us on the 10th. but it was like.
Oh,
they need
yeah,
to come
yeah, they need to
present.
be available, yes.
Okay, so is that too short of a turnaround for them is what I'm wondering,
Not if,
or you think it's okay?
because when they turn it in, they should
They
turn it in
should
with the
be prepared.
expectation that they're going to present
Okay.
on the 10th.
Okay,
So I agree with, let's make it, let's give them as much time as possible. This is my decision,
Yeah.
but maybe we say the 9th. That
Yeah.
way we can approve it on the 10th.
Yep, yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
So change that to Tuesday, May 9th, and then working back. So we want to select someone by December of 2024, from what I heard from you, Dr. Ed,
Right.
right? The yellow part?
Right.
Okay,
December 2024 or 2023.
23.
Yeah.
23, sorry,
Yeah.
23.
We have
Oh.
24 in there, so let's make sure we update that to 23.
And then the only other date that we need to change is in section 8. Or actually, maybe we don't. It still says May 10th.
Really quick, actually,
Yeah.
so the thing with the selection of the consultant, it is assuming that just because they submit something that they are not selected. So we have to select who can
present.
do an oral presentation per section.
So we would select them on the 10th.
All the
So then
opportunities.
we would need to change that May 10th date to the next board meeting.
24th.
Which we discussed that we can.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. The board directors review responses to the request for, will invite finalists to make an oral presentation in person or via Zoom. Finalist presentations shall include the person who provide the consultant service. All proposals should be prepared to make an oral presentation either in person or in Zoom. Wednesday, 10th, final presenters will be contacted and scheduled for presentation time. Board selects a consultant, parties will.
So,
So I guess I'm not reading in there. Where does it say that we can't?
so all proposers should be prepared to make an oral presentation either in person or via Zoom if selected on Wednesday, May 10th.
Oh, so take the F selected out.
Yeah, and How-
Well, yeah, so by,
Or
I mean, are we gonna get 20 and then we
Yeah,
have
what's
to
the-
allow? for-
There's only like,
what would you say, respond to that? Like, how many
Last time we got
are we
3.
expecting?
Okay,
Yeah, it'll be 5 at the most.
Okay, so I
Okay.
think you could cross off that finalist or whatever it is and make it
The,
anyone who,
there's not a selection process. So long as you submit, you will present.
Yes.
Okay,
I think so.
and we don't have to, nowhere in there does it say that we have to have them present. It just says, hey, be prepared.
But I think that Melanie has to like contact them to confirm for them that like they met the deadline, right? I'm assuming that like, because it says submit everything to Melanie Freeman at this thing by no later than 2:00. So like if they send it in at 2:05 or whatever, like we have to give a minute for her to reach out and confirm to
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that you will be, you met all the qualifications and you will be presenting, right?
yeah, 'cause she has to give them a slot.
I think you're overthinking it
Okay.
because we'll get 4,
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, if someone doesn't meet the deadline, when the Melanie can say, hey, you don't meet the deadline, or Paris, I'm sorry, I should say. Hello, Paris, how's it going? They could say, hey, sorry, you don't meet the deadline, but it says all proposals. So, so she can go, okay, hey, I want you guys, here's the Zoom room, be prepared to be sitting in this Zoom room. Maybe they'll call you, maybe they won't. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
And so,
So then are we removing the final presenters will be contacted and scheduled for their presentation time?
I would just say, I would take off the F selected and I would say presenters will be contacted and scheduled for their presentation time.
Okay.
Or, I mean, just as a side, we could leave it exactly as it is, and we could say, I'm not trying to do this like slide down to you, we say, hey, board chair, you get to decide if you want 3, 4, 12, if we get 12, 20. I mean, really, we will, last time we got 3, I bet you we get 3 again, 4 max. And she can could decide what's the final presenter, or we can just take that if selected off, just say that final off and just say presenters will be contacted.
I think to make it simple and not challengeable,
Yeah.
we need to take those words off.
Yeah.
Because if we leave it arbitrary and say the board chair is going to pick whoever gets to decide, and someone challenges that and says, what was the criteria for why we were left off?
Yeah, that's a good point. So why don't we just do that? If the board's okay with that, we can just take off the if selected and then that final.
And then are we just saying December twenty twenty-four for this yellow highlighted part, or we?
Twenty twenty-three.
Or twenty twenty-three, we're changing that to twenty twenty-three,
Yes.
December, and then are we selecting a date in December, or are we just saying December?
The board meeting is the 13th of December,
Okay,
so you could say by December 13th.
by December 13th.
Or we could even say by December, well, yes, because no one's gonna meet. I was gonna say by December 31st, but in case we want to have a special meeting or something, but I'm not gonna be available around Christmas, so special meeting's not gonna happen. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, so we could say by December 14th,
Okay,
2023.
we changed our mind enough times.
Is that clear? Do you want me to print it and write this down after the meeting or?
That'd be nice.
Okay, got it. If the board's okay with that, I can do that.
I've already got the change.
Oh, you do?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I just wanted
Just-
to make sure there was a lot of chatter, so I wanted to make sure that. Okay,
Just okay. Are you guys just okay with the expectations? Because I essentially copied and pasted what this other district had. I modified a couple of them a little bit. But if there's something else that we want them to bring to us or do or something like that, but this scope is pretty typical of what they did
Yeah.
for the last search.
I thought it sounded good.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the request for proposal for a superintendent search firm with the proposed changes.
the motion's been made
Second,
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Cool. First reading to amend policy 3421, child abuse and neglect.
I can give a little context on this. There were some changes. This is a WASDA policy amendment. And WASDA simply is updating this policy to be more in line with the state statute.
All right. Any other discussion or questions?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the first reading to amend policy 3421, child abuse and neglect.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. First reading to amend policy 3230, searches of students and student privacy. Discussion. I have some concerns about this. When we first received it, we received just the policy. And the policy is any authorized school official will conduct searches according to the procedure associated with the policy. So we have the procedure, we got it a couple days ago. And in that procedure, which I don't have open right now, there is discussion about health and welfare. Hold on. See if I grab it. Health and welfare inspections. But we don't really define what those are. And I have some additional concerns about. I want to make sure that the legality of this is right, but it says administrative inspections or health and welfare inspections may be conducted to locate misplaced library books. And it continues on. I need some more information about that, especially because this topic has been a hot topic in the past about, I want to make sure that our policy and our procedure line up with what should be expected. So I'd like to propose that we table this discussion until our next meeting.
Can I ask some questions
Yeah.
real quick?
Uh-huh.
So, my understanding, Dr. M, is this is WASDA, right? We essentially just took the WASDA. Okay.
Do you know what a health and welfare inspection to find a library book means?
Right, and similar to Director Beach, I'd like a little bit more time to dig into this.
Okay. That's all I need to hear.
It feels like a lot to do a health and welfare inspection for a misplaced library book or some of the other things in that section. So yeah,
So are you asking to put this on the next board meeting then? On the agenda for next board meeting?
I'd like the table until I can do a little bit more research.
Okay. So somebody else slapped my hand about this. So when we table something, we have to give a time frame. or else it just kind of dies. It just kind of floats out because
Right.
some things you could be tabled forever and you just never come
Right.
back up. So do you want me to, you want the motion like a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, next 3 board meetings?
I'd actually like to bring it to the June meeting.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we table the first reading to amend policy 3230 searches for students and student privacy until the June board meeting.
I'll second that. The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All right, first reading to amend policy 1250, student on governing boards. Discussion.
Yeah, so a couple of things on this. So this is something that with everything going on with regionalization and stuff, this is something that's been on my heart, but I've just been like, oh gosh. I'm sure like, I don't know if you guys have also, well, actually, you probably haven't been to some of the WASDA stuff that I've had, but there are some boards out there that just have amazing, dynamic, wonderful student representatives. They're just like, I mean, you're just like, oh gosh, like this kid is my personification that the world is going to be okay, right? Like there's some things going well. And I really wanted to lean into this. Logan Indris, who is Marissa, who is our strategic advocacy director, is super passionate about student reps. He actually was a student rep before he worked for WASDA. Some of this is a MASA policy, but there's a lot of cool things that other boards are doing with their student reps, how that student rep comes to the board, right? Some are doing it as we're doing it, where the ASB vice president is doing it. Some are, it's a student-wide, like students put in applications and the board selects one. Some, the students all put in application and the ASB selects them. You know, there's kind of different ways. And I want us to spend some time to really fashion this in a way that does it really well, where it's not just kind of like, oh, you're VP of ASB, congratulations, you got to go to board meetings now, right? Where it's, and we've got, not that Ava's not doing a great job, because she is, but I also want Ava to say, hey, Ava, what do you think? And she's not here tonight, help us. What do you think that we should do for this? So I think I'd love to dial into it more. I certainly don't mind taking this on and working with Ava, and then maybe even inviting Logan to come to a meeting and kind of talk to us about different options and stuff like that. And then the other thing that I'm super passionate about, and it goes with my, frankly, my just love for Crossroads, is we have had in the past, I think, were you here when Clay was here, Carly, when we had our last Crossroads student rep?
No.
Okay. We've had in the past amazing student reps from Crossroads. Clay, I'm not saying it because he's sitting here, but our superintendent's daughter was an amazing Crossroads representative to the board. We've had two, and I thought that was really, really cool when we had two. I know we're even changing that to one. I would love to find a way that we can get a Crossroads student rep. So all that said, like I said, don't want to make a long one. I'd like to table this discussion, let's say until, well, I want to do it before Ava leaves. Next board meeting, do we have is that Success in Ed?
No.
May
10th.
May 10th?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to table this to the May 10th meeting, and then we'll talk about it again, maybe a new policy or something along those lines, but just kind of play with it a little bit. So if the board's okay with that, I'd like to make a motion to table the first reading to amend policy 1250 student on governing boards to the May 10th board meeting.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, discussion for special meeting on May 3rd. We sort of had this discussion earlier with Marshall when he asked us for input on what to prepare. Is there any additional discussion?
Don't know if I can make it. I'll let you know.
Okay. All right, so I don't think we need an action on that. It's just a discussion point.
Do we want to, before do we want to change it? Because there's a lot of big things there that I would hate to not have Carly there. Do we want to try to delay it at some other point, or I'm just putting that out for discussion where we have the full board there?
I can try and rearrange this. I just haven't.
No, I'm not asking you to do that. Like maybe we'll just change the day of the meeting.
Oh, if we could, that would be.
I mean, I don't know if that's possible. I'm just throwing that out there so that Carly doesn't have to change her life and she can be there.
Can you guys do, boy. Well, I might be able to do the 4th. Cinco de Mayo, who wants to do that? So,
I would,
would May 4th work?
I won't be here. I'll be in Arizona.
Well, we
Just
just,
keep it the third and I'll figure it out.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got some things I can rearrange, so it's not like,
okay. All right, consent agenda, and there were some additions on that. Any discussion? Then I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda with the additions.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Perfect. We will adjourn at 9:25, and then we will have an executive session. Are we going to take a break, or we're just going into it?
Whatever you want. You're the
What do you
boss.
guys? Okay, then we will begin executive session for,
15 minutes.
is that enough time?
I think so.
All right, we'll begin our executive session
You always extend if we had to.
for 15 minutes, beginning at 9:26. Hate hitting, there you go, I'm not doing it loud, next to the microphone. I want to do that.
Stand up.
Yeah, I know. Kind of a